launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes, is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, you're up early. I'm up early. Shall we do this? Let's get that tie straightened. We've got work to do. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Happy Sunday, one and all. And breaking this morning, deal or no deal, the US Vice President J.D. Vance walks away from negotiations with Iran. Is it time for Donald to step in and finish the job? Shock as thousands of migrants from Afghanistan enter the UK on a Ukrainian visa. What is going on? We've got the inside story. And Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, has said that the UK's armed forces are in their weakest state for 400 years. So here's my question to you this morning. How safe is Britain in Keir Starmer's hands? And it's the interview they all wanted in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. The Daily Mail's Robert Hardman joins us to discuss his stunning new book about Queen Elizabeth II. What would she make of King Charles's performance so far? What would she make of Harry and Meghan? And what would she make of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? Robert Hardman live on the show. It's the interview they all wanted, a Talk Breakfast exclusive. Queen Elizabeth II. Was she our greatest ever Briton? And what about that? The weakest armed forces in 4 centuries. So my question to you this morning, how safe is Britain in Starmer's hands. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. A brand new star on the team. Rory is taking your calls with mellifluous Irish tones. He's got everything. He's a triple threat, right? Brains, looks and charm. 0344 499 1000. Give Rory a call now. Book your place on the show. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? And does Starmer represent you? Does he represent you? I want to know. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222 or leave us a voice note. We know you're busy on a Sunday morning. We will get those voice notes out. You can hear the show on DAB+, in-app and online. It's wonderful to have you listening. The DNA of the Talk brand is in radio. I used to do Rory's job here at Talk in 1998. Can you believe it? I was a backroom boy. Now look at me. But you, of course, watch the show as well, because this is a TV network and we're on YouTube. We are global. We've got viewers in Australia, the United States, across Europe and, of course, up and down the length of the UK. So all you've got to do is head over to YouTube to see the show, to see the action, because we don't mess around. Where's the FT? I always chuck that. We don't need it. Yes, you can see the show. All you got to do is head to YouTube, search Talking Up. We pop 30,000 people watch the show every morning. That number is growing. Let's get it to 50. Shall we do this? Does Starmer represent you? How safe is Britain in Sir Keir's hands? It's all about your opinions. Let's talk. Very excited because just a few minutes from now we'll be joined in the studio by Duncan Barks, who is a colossus of broadcasting. He's a gentleman, a scholar, and writes about 99.9% of everything. Shall we have a look at today's front pages? I hope you're well. Are you having a good Sunday morning? Did you get much sleep last night? If you didn't, if you're feeling a little tired and cranky, get the kettle on, get some caffeine into your veins, and let's get to work. Front page of The Sun on Sunday. A very good friend of mine. This is a really worrying story. TV legend in hospital. Eamonn's Katie, I'm praying. 999 ambulance dash after stroke. Eamonn Holmes, his girlfriend, has been praying for the star after he suffered a stroke. The 66-year-old was found out cold at home and rushed to hospital. He's now recovering. Katie Alexander, his girlfriend, wrote online, "What a week. Prayer, prayer each day." Now, Eamonn Holmes is a few things. First of all, he's a legend of broadcasting. The guy's been in broadcasting for decades. He's a master of this medium. Of course, a former star of Talk, having hosted the Drive Time show with such distinction. He anchored the Sky News breakfast show, Good Morning Britain, TVAM. The guy's been around for so long. He's a fixture. He's a part of British national life. He's so skilled at what he does. He listens to his guests. He has, of course, oodles of Irish charm. His craft as a broadcaster is second to none. And let me throw one more thing into the mix. Eamonn Holmes is a lovely man. And I had the privilege of meeting him briefly here at Talk and then working with him elsewhere for a number of years. So generous, so happy to offer advice. I've had one or two bumps in the road professionally over the last year or two. And who's the first person to call me and text me? Eamonn. Mark, what's going on? Why have they let you go? It's crazy. You're so popular. So we love Eamonn. And talk about popular. Eamonn Holmes is such a loved figure, a national treasure, and he suffered a stroke. So we wish him well. Let me tell you that he's had his health issues. We know that his mobility is horrible. He's had back operations, some of which didn't go well, which have made things far, far worse. And so he's been in the wars. And we know romantically he's been in the wars as well, because he's parted company with Ruth Langsford, his lovely wife, and they have a child together. So he's had heartbreak. He's had so many health issues. He's had one or two financial problems as well, because the tax man's been after him. And even though he's a man of means, even Eamonn has had to keep working in order to settle his commitments with HMRC. And so the guy, do you know what I mean? It's been a tumultuous and torrid few years. And you know what they say, health is wealth. And that's something that has evaded Eamonn in recent years, is his health. But he's carried on working because he's such a trooper. And here's the main message. He's a fighter. He's a toughie. He is a survivor, and he'll get through this. Eamonn Holmes has had a stroke, but he's with us. He's recuperating. And all I can do on behalf of our viewers and listeners and my colleagues here at Talk is to send our love and our warmth and our best wishes and our prayers for a speedy recovery. Because Eamonn, big man, you're a hero. We love you loads. Keep on fighting. The Sunday Telegraph. Phillipson betrayed women on rights law. Minister accused of putting career before need to provide safe single-sex spaces. Bridget Phillipson is blocking guidance on upholding women's rights to single-sex spaces over fears it could damage her career, the former head of Britain's equalities watchdog has said. Baroness Faulkner, who drew up the equality law changes, has accused Phillipson of putting her personal ambition ahead of her role as Women and Equalities Minister over fears that pro-trans backbenchers will scupper any chance of promotion if she publishes the guidance. Thursday will mark the first anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court judgment on the definition of a woman, which ruled that trans women are not legally women for the purpose of the Equality Act. Folks, this isn't complicated. Can I help you with this at 11 minutes past 6 on a Sunday morning? If you have a Willy Winkle, you're a man. If you have a Mew Mew, you're a lady. The end. It's not complicated. Willy Winkle, man. Mew Mew, lady. The end. That was like a Dolan's dispatch, and it was uncharacteristically snappy and succinct. Willy Winkle, man. Mew Mew, lady. The end. Don't take my word for it. Every biology textbook that's ever been written, GCSE biology, A-level biology, primary school biology, Willy Winkle man, Mew Mew, lady. Every university medical degree, Willy Winkle man, Mew Mew, lady. The Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land, Willy Winkle man, Mew Mew, lady, the end. So why is the, wait for it, Education Secretary struggling with that? Why? Well, because she's in the pockets of the lefties, the progressive left, the Be Kind crowd, who don't understand human biology because they're so caught up in an ideology around transgenderism, which will have you believe that there are 100 genders, and that it's appropriate to say to a primary school child at the age of 5, hello, little Johnny, are you a boy or are you a girl today? If a primary school teacher says to a little boy who has a Willy Winkle, not a Mew Mew, if a primary school teacher says to your little son at the age of 5, hello, Johnny, are you a little boy or are you a girl today? How do you feel? That's child abuse, okay? That's child abuse. And you should be struck off. Instead, it's actually fashionable and you're a good person if you do it. But what are you doing when you say to Johnny, who's 5 years old, are you a boy or a girl today? You're confusing him. You're giving him misinformation because he is a boy because he's got a Willy Winkle, not a Mew Mew. And you're brainwashing. It's social engineering. You're planting this bizarre, ungodly idea that there are 100 genders. Now, can I offer a counterbalance to this? To say that there are trans people, and there are trans people watching this show and listening to this show, and I love all human beings on the planet. And there are people who are Steve that just feel like they are a Deborah, a Brigitte, or a Lorraine. And that has always been the case, and it always will be. And those people can identify as adults how the heck they like. And if you're Robert and you'd like me to call you Jane now, all day long, because I'm a libertarian. I'm looking at Phil Dave, who, by the way, just because we're very clear about gender, Willy Winkle or Mew Mew. Let me tell you, Phil Dave, Willy Winkle, and then some. Oh, my goodness. And then some. And the truth is that, you know, we get it, you understand this gender thing. But no, it's completely inappropriate in an education setting to introduce this idea. So there are grown-ups, and I've got close friends that have been on that journey, and they were born a Robert and they feel like a Brigitte. And there's no point denying it. It is a thing. But my sort of landing point here is, you know, I'm a libertarian. You live your life as you wish. If I chose, I'm in all week, by the way, for the brilliant Ian Collins from 1 till 4 for the whole of this coming week. And I'm looking forward to it. If I decide that tomorrow I'm Marcia Dolan and I'm going to do this thing in a very tight-fitting monsoon dress, I'm going to come and do it. And that's fine. It's a free country. And I can't lie, I have a great set of pins. I do have the legs to pull it off. But it wouldn't make me a woman. And that's the key issue about this trans debate is tolerance, respect, equality under the law for trans people. Okay, an acknowledgement that they honestly feel that they are not that gender, no problem. Right, I'm afraid you can't be belligerent about it. If someone is a Robert and he feels like a Brigitte, you can't just say, no, I'm going to lock you in prison or something. Okay, that's his journey. But Robert, when he becomes Brigitte, is not a woman. Robert becomes a trans woman. And that's fine. But a woman gets the female prisons. A woman gets their own sport. A woman gets their own bathroom. A woman gets their own cubicle at Primark. Other stores are available. And that's the difference. It's not complicated. For the hard of thinking, especially the so-called education secretary, Willy Winkle, man, Mew Mew, girl. The end. Maximus effort, maximum reward. I Am Maximus cemented its position as one of the very best to grace Aintree as it won the Grand National for the second time in 3 years. The first horse since Red Rum to regain the title. But it was a bruising day for Fitzwilliam bookmakers, who took a £100,000 single bet at 8-1 on the winner. It saw them lose 800 grand. Very unusual for the bookies to lose, but on that occasion, they'll be crying into their beer. Rupert Bell, who is Talk Sports racing correspondent and Talk's royal correspondent, he's got a lot of jobs, old Rupert. The reason why, he's got a lot of women in his life who he has to pay for, first of all. Rupert Bell's love life is, you would not believe how complicated it is. See, it's like, you know that thing about a lady in every port? Rupert Bell's love life is complicated. So he's got all these women to pay for, and then years and years of gambling debts, which is why he's taken on 2 jobs, which is Talk Sports racing correspondent and Talk's royal. He knows nothing about the royal family, but he just needs the cash. Anyway, he gave me, I can't remember, Phil, can you remember what horse old Rupert Bell recommended yesterday? It came, I think it came like 20th. I mean, it's straight off to the knacker's yard. It'll be super glue by tomorrow. So I've lost an absolute fortune thanks to Rupert Bell, whose private life is so complicated. So many women. The Mail on Sunday. Don't leave Britain defenceless. Le humiliation. Once mighty navy faces begging French fleet for help to patrol our own waters as PM is mocked for Chagos deal U-turn. Let's have a look at the Sunday Express. U-turn of all U-turns. Kemi claims victory, slamming spineless PM over Chagos deal. And Sunday Mirror, Wes Streeting exclusive. Corridor care makes me feel ashamed. Health Secretary vows to clean up Tory NHS mess and accelerate reform. There you go. Those are some of your front pages. It was final orders. I lumped on. Listen, folks. I would never be so indulgent as to share my personal mood whilst broadcasting, because my job when I get on the radio and on the telly is to bring sunshine, laughter, warmth, happiness, wisdom, and to be right about everything, which is obviously what I do. But I'm going to share with you this morning that I'm raging because I lumped on the Grand National, Rupert Bell, right, and his myriad of maidens, a tenner. That's money I'm not going to get back. So I'm afraid I'll be doing this gig for some considerable time in order to tackle the cost of Rupert Bell's bad advice. Folks, so many more front pages to come. Simple question for you. How safe is Britain in Sir Keir Starmer's hands? Does he represent Britain? I want to know. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. More front pages next, and one of my all-time favourite broadcasters. Don't go anywhere.
2026. It's going to be the only way to start your day. It's the home of common sense. It's where the nation can come to speak about the day's news. It's the Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show. You know who you are. You get up, you graft, you work hard. I'm here for you. We want to hear your side. I promise you one thing. It is where the nation can and will come to talk. The Jeremy Kyle Breakfast Show, weekdays from 6 a.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 6:22 Sunday Times. Greens vote surge would cost 3 cabinet ministers their seats, poll says. Well, the threat of the Greens is one of the aspects of my Dolan's Dispatch today at 9 a.m. I really recommend you catch it. US and Iran start historic peace talks. Well, we've got a development on that because at the moment it is no deal rather than deal. And Richard Tice's firm broke law over unpaid £91,000 tax. Richard Tice's company broke the law by failing to pay tens of thousands of pounds in tax on dividends that were paid to him and his offshore trust. Reform UK's deputy leader, who's also the business, trade and energy spokesman for Nigel Farage's party, received at least £91,000 in excess payments as a result of the failure. We'll get you more on that shortly. Mission accomplished. The Artemis 2 crewmates, Reed Wiseman, Christina Koch, Jeremy Hansen and Victor Glover, stand in front of Integrity, the Orion spacecraft. Of course, they've made history. More power to them. And this in the Sunday Mirror. Wes Streeting exclusive. Corridor care makes me feel ashamed. Health Secretary vows to clean up Tory NHS mess and accelerate reforms. Look, I'm delighted to welcome live in the studio a very good friend of mine, one of the finest broadcasters in the country, journalist, broadcaster and star of Talk, no less, Duncan Barks. Hello, Duncan.
Morning.
Top of the morning. Well, listen, the papers are slightly behind when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East. J.D. Vance has flown into Pakistan. He has thanked his hosts for facilitating these talks with Iran, but he's gone away without a deal. He's back on a jet heading towards Washington, D.C. What's next?
That's a very good question. Very significant that he was there. You know, that shows how vital and how important the US saw these talks in Islamabad over the last 24 hours. It was great that he was there. I think most viewers and listeners to Talk this morning will be slightly upset, if not saddened, that there's not been a resolution, because ultimately we are seeing it day after day, the cost of living going up and the benchmark, you know, even if you're not interested in our geopolitical world and you think Iran is kind of over there, it's not my problem. You see it in the forecourts, you see diesel knocking on £2 a litre, you see unleaded at 160, 170, and it's affecting all of us. And this is what matters. And I think most people listening to us this morning will be thinking, why couldn't they work something out? And I think fundamentally, from what I can pick up here, the stumbling block, there are 2 stumbling blocks, one of which is the Strait of Hormuz, who ultimately controls it, looks after it. You've got to question whether or not Trump fully realised how significant that particular bit of seaway is, because it's a stranglehold, isn't it, on the rest of the world? So strategically, you know, he started this conflict. Did he fully realise the impact of his actions? Because Iran, quite rightly, are just like, all right, well, we'll just stop all of the vessels.
And it's 20% of the oil that passes through the strait.
Absolutely vast. The other thing, of course, and it seems to be the other stumbling block in these negotiations, is about Iran being able to develop nuclear capability. Now, I think anyone who's sane doesn't want Iran to have nuclear capability. They're on the record to say that they would wipe Israel off the face of the planet, right? So you find yourself going, well, where do we go from here? You know?
And also, I think the UK need to wake up a bit, because there are terror cells, Iranian terror cells in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's quite clear that the Iranians would nuke the UK as well if they had the power. They don't just hate Israel. And this is what the progressive left who are out protesting this war don't understand.
They don't understand because fundamentally they don't want to see it, or they are thick. Listen, I'm fed up of our Prime Minister going, we're not at war, we're not part of this war. Of course we're part of this war.
I'm so fed up with it.
We are seen as a target by Iran. Quite simply, so when you have...
We've been at war for 2 decades.
Exactly. But, I mean, it's really come into focus in the last 4 to 5 weeks. When Starmer says we're only taking part in defensive action, we're only allowing American planes to fly out of RAF bases for defensive action. And you look at what defensive action means. That includes blowing up missile silos in Iran. OK, that's a form of defensive action. Now, if you're an Iranian and you're part of the regime, you're going to go, well, the UK are not our friends, right? So therefore, they're not our friends, they're our enemy. So we are at war with them, no matter what he says, to try and walk this tightrope to appease his Labour backbenchers or his core votes in various constituencies. We have been at war for 2 decades in various forms, and you can make the same point with Russia as well, right? But what we're seeing now is what you call bullets and ships and aircraft, and the UK is into it up to its neck.
Most definitely it is. I still think a deal will happen, but what the US is going to have to do is be very firm with the Iranian regime. They are terrorists, and the only thing that terrorists respond to is strength.
Aggression.
And aggression. And Donald Trump has that in spades. And I suspect that he's going to up his game now, and what we're going to see in the days ahead is the art of the deal on acid. You know, because he'll pull whatever levers he has to.
I was thinking about
I can't wait for the next Truth Social
That's
post.
exactly what I was going to say. I was driving in thinking, I mean, we're on air now. What time is it? Almost
Well, I
6.
won't be able to read it out loud because it won't be for a family show what he says, will it?
Do you think he's going to use bad language again?
Well, he's going to say worse things than Willy Willy and Mew Mew.
What's Mew Mew?
Well, basically, Bridget Phillipson is really struggling. She doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to get in trouble with the executive producer of the show, but I've explained to my audience that Willy Winkle, boy, Mew Mew, lady.
Understood. Haven't heard that term for a long, long time.
I know. I'm here for it.
So yeah, I'm wondering. I mean, I think literally that's where the eyes of the world are currently at. Truth Social. What's Donald going to stick on there next?
What do you think, Duncan? Has Donald bitten off more than he can chew in the Middle East?
Yeah, I think maybe he has.
Do you think maybe this whole adventure was a mistake?
Look. I think it's right to prune back Iran, okay, for all kinds of reasons. They can't be trusted with nuclear capability. They fund terrorism around the world.
I appreciate the gardening metaphor, by the way.
Yeah, I was struggling. Could you tell? It's the best one I could come up with.
Are you telling me that Donald Trump is an orange Alan Titchmarsh?
Blimey, there's a thought.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So I think he went into this not fully. I mean, America has a little bit of previous with this, doesn't it? Going into conflicts without actually working out what the end game is. And I was talking to someone during the week about this. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Russians going into Afghanistan, right? So you're going back, what, 40 years, 35 years?
Yeah.
And they couldn't take Afghanistan because of the terrain, all right? So when you hear people talking about boots on the ground in Iran,
be afraid, be very afraid.
It would be a bloodbath.
It would be a disaster.
Because they know the terrain inside out, and all of those American soldiers would lose their lives. So I don't think he fully thought about what the end game would be or how he would get there. And it's coming back to bite him on the backside because there isn't a massive amount of support in the US from what I see at the moment for this war. You know, you're seeing gasoline, or gas as they call it, $6 or $7, you know?
I'm very torn on it because I think on the one hand it's not playing out very well at the moment and my viewers and listeners are suffering, but it is a wicked regime, and to deal with Iran in the last few years has been a talking shop.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Democrats even negotiated a deal to hand billions to the Iranians to make them be nice.
I know.
And
they'll never be nice.
Feeding the monster.
They will never be nice.
They're also fatally wounded now. They've been enfeebled. They've lost their navy, which is sat at the bottom of the ocean. They don't have an air force to speak of.
No.
So I do think they've been set back a decade. I think what the purpose of these peace talks is is to make sure that that commitment to not creating nuclear weapons is stuck to. So I just think it's going to take time, and I think that at some point we're going to see Donald on an aeroplane, and that's when he closes the deal.
I think it's within both parties' interests to actually find a resolution for this. I mean, Iran has, as you've just outlined in many ways, its navy's been destroyed, a lot of its infrastructure's been destroyed. It ain't in a good place, right? So they want some kind of solution, but they want to save face somehow. And I think Trump will know this.
Well, I know, and I think one thing he might do is offer sweeteners. Yeah. Because the art of the deal is that you play very hard, but you also have a lot of sweeteners as well. And I think there will be economic cooperation. He could lift sanctions.
He could do that.
I mean, Iran could become a rich country again within months because they have enormous natural resources.
The thing that makes me nervous is one of the things that they might try and thrash out as this idea that ships pay effectively a toll to sail through the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
And that's not good for us. That's not good for anyone, because ultimately that additional cost to shipping companies and oil companies would be passed on to us. And also, you've got to ask the question, if that were to happen, where would that money go? What would Iran spend the money on? Now, they might go, it's about rebuilding the country that the US bombed. Really?
I know.
Is it a lot? You're not going to use some of that just to continue to oppress your people? Maybe buy some more weapons from Russia or North Korea or China? So I'm nervous about this idea that there might be some kind of literally a toll system, which is if you want your oil tanker to sail through here without being blown up, you need to give us, half a $500,000 per voyage.
Most definitely. I think all very fair points. How about this from Paul? Good morning, Mark, and good morning, Duncan. 47 years of trying to negotiate with the Iranians surely proves they cannot be trusted. I'm sick of the protests by the wet liberals and personally hope that Donald wipes out the terrorist regime once and for all. The terrorist groups would certainly wipe us out if they could. Yeah. Paul, thank you for that. Keep those messages coming. Angie in Gloucestershire. Good morning, Angie. How are you? Thank you for watching or listening to the show. Angie says, hello, Mark. Your guest seems to think that Iran is within its rights to stop traffic in the Strait of Hormuz.
Never said that.
It is not. What's happened to you, Duncan?
I never said that.
How could you speak with such ill judgment?
I never said it.
Have you gone woke?
I'm certainly not woke. I never said... Who's this particular listener?
This is Angie, who's not
Angie, I never said that.
Angie's just given you a handbagging.
Oh, well, she didn't land any blows.
And you've not even had your coffee yet.
No, there's a hint in there, actually. I could do with a coffee.
Duncan, we love you, but you're having a horrible day at the office today.
Do you think so?
You're being taken
down. Am I coming across as a liberal?
No, not at all. I'm only pulling your leg.
Am I a wokist?
Never. It's never going to happen. Over your dead body. Angie says, you're right, you didn't say that. Angie says it's wrong. I think what you're saying is that they've been able to weaponise the Strait of Hormuz.
They've been able to weaponise it. And what I'm saying, Ange, if you don't mind me calling you in that informal way, is that Trump should have seen that coming.
There you go. And Angie does raise a brilliant point, which we can all agree with. Iran used to be liberal pre-1979. Yep. It's worth listening to the voice of Iranian people who have been repressed since then. Angie, you are so right. We all can't wait to see the back of this regime.
Can I make the observation that all of these protests, right, that we see supporting the Iranian regime, these liberals, these wokists, these people left of centre who only really understand politics when it suits whatever weird agenda they've got, they would not be allowed to protest in the way they've been protesting in London, in Iran, all right? They would not have the rights that they have in this country in Iran. And you typically see these kind of like, I get confused, LGBTQ plus banners supporting Iran or whatever, or indeed various regimes around the world. You wouldn't last 5 minutes if you were there. You'd be swinging from a crane. I'm sorry to be brutal about it.
Absolutely right.
And it's just like, what's the matter with these people?
They are insane. They're deranged. They don't get it, do they? Good morning, Mark, says Susan. I appreciate your monologue on men in women's prisons. And although I do acknowledge that there are some people who want to present as the opposite sex, there is no such thing as a trans woman. The term is trans-identifying man. Woman as a category is taken and we want to keep it. It's a fair point, Susan. Yeah. Bridget Phillipson is failing women by prevaricating over this, allowing institutions to keep breaking the law by putting the feelings of some confused men before women's safety. Women have had enough. Susan, maybe you're right about that. Maybe even the expression trans woman is a problem. Trans-identifying man might be a solution. Thank you for that. There you go. You see, Duncan, we've both had a bit of a handbagging.
We have, haven't we?
Do you know what? Rightly so. We had it coming.
You think so?
Oh, my God.
Do you think we need to go on some kind of course just to pull us back from the edge?
I think so. We need to have a think about ourselves. I'm putting you on the naughty step. Let's take a voice note from Pete. We'll get there in a second, don't worry. Pete is on his way.
These teachers should be taken aside because if they're teaching little kids this, what other unsavoury things are they teaching kids at that age? Well, those little minds that are easily formed in opinion, we know with all the political stuff they're trying to put into their heads as well. I'm sorry, in my opinion, in a biological fact that you are born a man or a woman, you die the same. The only thing that can change it these days is the miracle of modern surgery and drugs to alter the outside appearance of a person. This world has changed completely. Fair enough, if people want to be trans, it's up to them. But why should they force this on somebody else? Why has it got to have a big deal made out of it every time? You know, look at me, and if you don't look at me, you're in trouble. You know, and I accept people wherever they are. Just don't force it in our faces. Just don't make us do it.
Well said. I think that's the tyranny of the left, Pete, isn't it? Totally ideological and totally forceful and authoritarian. It's madness. Pete, thank you for your voice note. Keep those voice notes coming. Does Keir Starmer represent Britain? 6:37. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. We're going to do a Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. and it's all about fairness in this country. You won't want to miss it. Live in the studio, broadcaster and talk star Duncan Barks. Duncan,
yes.
Le humiliation. Once mighty Navy faces begging French fleet for help to patrol our own waters. What's the story here?
Oh, this is just so depressing. I mean, I don't know where to start with this. So ultimately, we've had these stories over the last few days about, they call them the shadow fleet, Russian vessels sailing through the channel. These are oil tankers or potentially cargo vessels, because there is some speculation one vessel had military parts on it that was heading to Russia. And Talk viewers and listeners may be aware that also one of these vessels was escorted by a Russian warship. Now, we have a situation where over the last 3 decades, our Navy has been slowly salami sliced in terms of vessels have been retired. And I find this really interesting. I think this is something that everyone needs to wake up and take note of. And I'll tell you why. There's no votes in defence, okay? Voters,
I know,
for whatever reason, well, actually, I say for whatever reason, they kind of like, it's not on their radar, if you pardon the pun. It's just kind of like, well, what do I get out of it? Well, actually, you get the security of this island out of it. But a lot of people are just like, well, you know, I want more money for welfare. Well, I think we've reached the point now where money needs to be spent on warships and not welfare. Now, you can't hang all of this on the Labour government, though it's interesting. John Healey, the Defence Secretary, who frankly should be removed from his job because he's not fit for purpose, you know, did a radio interview a couple of weeks ago. He didn't know how many vessels we had in the Royal Navy. This is really, really basic stuff, okay? But when you hear him, or indeed any other cabinet members, they're the first to go, well, of course, it was under the Conservatives, 14 years and stuff. Not true. I will tell you in the last 2 years, some very basic research will tell you that Labour have retired HMS Albion, HMS Bulwark and also HMS Northumberland inside the last 2 years. So that is on their watch. So whilst the Conservatives are culpable because they did not commit to enough funding for UK defence and in this particular case the Navy, Labour can't just pass the buck on this and say it's got nothing to do with us. They have retired Royal Navy frigates and other vessels on their watch, and it makes me sick that they're using this as a political football. Now it goes back even further because the problem with UK defence and particularly the Navy is you can't just build boats overnight, right? It takes a bit of time. And this also gets us into the area of steel security, and we know how bad it is in this country.
Big time.
Exactly, not to be able to produce enough of our own steel. All of these points and these dots are kind of linked. This goes back to the Blair government as well, all right? So we had the Blair government and Brown government from 97 to 2010, then we had Cameron and the coalition from 2010 onwards, to 2024. So it's a plague on all of their houses, but listeners need to be aware and viewers need to be aware that Labour, when they pop up on Talk or indeed elsewhere and just go, it's all the Conservative problem, in the last 2 years, they have overseen the retirement of Royal Navy vessels. And they go, well, some of them are quite old. Well, so what? Refurbish them, all right? You don't retire stuff unless you can replace it or have a replacement already in place. So I think people need to realise that this idea that for many, many years they called it the Cold War dividend, we don't need to worry too much about defence because, you know, the Cold War's ended, we're all part of NATO. NATO, since Trump's appeared, right, NATO's not a banker by any stretch of the imagination.
And it was actually very wrong for Europeans to rely on the largesse and generosity of US taxpayers for our security on this continent for so long. Trump's not wrong. Yes, it's painful that he's separated himself from the project, but it was actually a great injustice to America that we were complacent for so long. You know, the Germans were spending, what, 1.5% of their GDP on defence. Meanwhile, you know, an amazing cost of living for Germans, cruising around in Mercs and BMWs, all paid for by blue-collar Americans.
Very true. Every European country has taken their eye off the ball and it's coming back to bite them on the backside. But the most important thing about the United Kingdom is we are an island. All right, we need to ensure that our waters are protected. That is going to be the last line of defence, right? And it's not just about other vessels from other countries being in our waters that we can't apprehend, and we might have to rely on the French to help us intercept Russian vessels. This is also about making sure that vital supplies get to the United Kingdom as well. And this isn't the other part of dereliction of duty. You know, around half our food is imported into the UK. We don't have food security, right? So if you wanted to
Which is by design.
Yeah.
Because we have the weather and the soil for it.
Absolutely. So, you know, instead of like plastering solar panels all over fields and stuff, we should be growing crops so we're more self-sufficient when it comes to providing food for our own people. Instead, we rely on boats to come here with all kinds of food stuffs and grain and cereal, etc., etc. You need to ensure you have an efficient, well-resourced Royal Navy to ensure those vessels get here.
And you're so right about food security. Where do we get our cheese from? Well, we should get it from the West Country.
Exactly.
Where do we get our apples from? Should be Kent.
Yes.
Where do we get our meat from? In every green pasture across the land. Potatoes, beer. I mean, we import water. We import apples from Fiji. It's utter insanity,
and we're partly to blame.
Recalibration.
We're partly to blame because people go, well, I like those pink lady apples in the supermarket. Well, they don't come from this country, right? Make sure you have a Braeburn that's grown somewhere in Kent. You know, we have a responsibility as a population to perhaps just realise that we've been spoiled. And this, Angie will be back on the messages.
Well, Angie, by the way, Angie's sending a lot of love.
Oh, well, that's all right.
Yeah, because Angie says, my apologies if I misheard Duncan. I'm glad he corrected me. And he knows that the Straits of Hormuz are international waters. I love the show. But Angie, you're right to correct him. Angie, I welcome the accountability.
I've signed up for a course.
I think what it means...
I'm going to finish here at 7:30 and going straight on a course.
Well, I'm glad because it means that when you open your mouth, you've got Angie in the back of your mind.
Always in the back of my mind.
By the way,
and in the front of my mind.
Britain at its weakest in 400 years. We need to prioritise bullets over benefits. Kemi Badenoch warned Starmer. That's very much the theme that you struck. There are people on the left who say we should be giving money to the nurses, not the military. These people are insane.
They are insane. I would argue that why does it have to be a choice? Right? These are political choices, and that is rhetoric. It's just like, oh, well, we ought to give more money to nurses as opposed to spending money on weapons and stuff. Do both, right?
Yeah.
Do both if you can.
You know, you broke my heart when you said that the military doesn't win votes. The other thing that doesn't win votes is infrastructure.
No. Can I just make one point on the military? I was during the week. We've talked about. I've known Nigel Farage for about 15 years. I texted him, and I said to him, I said, "There's a massive opportunity here," and I'm not a member of Reform or any political party,
sure,
right? But there is an opportunity here for a political party, and it might be his, it might be someone else, and maybe Kemi is starting to make the manoeuvres in the right direction to actually sell to the British people the concept that we need a well-resourced armed forces, and we're talking about the Royal Navy here, because it has never been so important. And the political party that actually starts to fill that ground with a bit of a strategy, I think might get some votes off the back of an issue, as we've just mentioned, that for majority of voters is not necessarily their priority. But even some people now be thinking, do you know what? We're hearing these stories about how the Navy is not what it was. Our full-time army you can fit in Twickenham Rugby Stadium, right? It's an absolute joke. You know, we need a political party who's going to put defence first. That is a space that needs to be filled.
Hugh in Basingstoke. Mark, I'm in my 9th decade. Until recently, I'd never heard any mention of trans stuff. Is this just a modern invention? Just asking. This from Ian. Good morning, Mark. Hello, Duncan. There are 4 genders, and they all transition. Boys and girls, boys become men, girls become women, end of. And what about this? We've got a voice note from lovely Anna when you're ready, David.
I can give you and your friend a little course on the correct language for these people. It's called a geezer, Mark, a bloke, a fella. You know, the original Adam. Putting a dress and a bra on, pearls, and calling yourself Sharon doesn't make you a woman. Anyone that teaches children that should not be around children.
Brilliant stuff, Anna. I couldn't agree with you more. Lots more to come. This is Talk Breakfast. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? Does Keir Starmer represent the United Kingdom? It is 6:48. More front pages next.
Its
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:50 Talk Breakfast. A fresh nightmare for Prince Harry as he is sued by the charity that he co-founded in the memory of his mother, Diana. Duncan Barks, your reaction?
Oh, it's just an increasing embarrassment, isn't it, really? I mean, I don't know. I keep hearing reports that literally every month there's a change of advisors for Harry and Meghan. They surround themselves with people who they say, we need your expertise in improving our image and profile and stuff. Then clearly these people try and do that, and they don't like what they hear. This is Harry and Meghan, and they tend to boot them out. And anyone, I mean, look, I'll give you some free advice. Just stop talking. Just stop talking, Harry. Stop. Just stop it. You know, you're taking people to court in this country. There's a good chance you're going to lose both those cases, right? And it's just like, have you got any idea what that makes you look like? Then the impact it still has on our royal family, which has already had its troubles with Andrew, you know, the black sheep. Just stop it.
Most definitely. I think it's a real headache for him. And I was just looking at the news wires yesterday. And are you familiar with Victoria Arbiter? Because she is the daughter of Dickie Arbiter.
Ah, yes, the former royal press secretary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I found a very, very interesting line from her on this latest case. OK, so this is Sentebale, which is the AIDS charity set up by Harry in memory of his mother. And Arbiter has said the following, and I think I want to bring you the exact quote because I think it's a real headache for Harry. Let's just get it up here because this is live telly and breaking news. So here we go. Oh my goodness gracious me, live radio. Essentially, the flavour of what she said is that actually this appears to have legs as a case because Sentebale have independent funding. So this court case, this libel action against Harry is not being funded through charitable donations. There is a benefactor that is paying for this. Also, the Border United is not just Dr. Sophie Chandauka, who had that public row with Harry. The board are on board with this one, no pun intended. And they have a case because they wouldn't want to go into this risking losing.
Exactly.
So it's a problem.
It's a massive problem. And you've got to try and just pare it back a little bit and strip it back and try and, well, I try and understand what is his motivation here. I still maintain he's a very angry young man for all kinds of reasons. You know, he lost his mum at a very early age, which you never recover from, despite what people say. So that's permanently there. That's not changing. But I also think he's got this influence of Meghan. You can almost, it seems to me that it's almost like, Harry, you got to show them who's boss. Harry, you got to show them who the top man is, right? All of that going on. And I think that she is driving this. And ultimately, I think some people in this country kind of still have a soft spot for Harry, but increasingly their patience is wafer, paper thin. And it's just relentless. And you literally, if he was here now, right, I'd go, mate, pub, midday, a few pints of Guinness.
Correct.
We'll have a kebab. We need to have a chat about stuff. Because it's almost like you need someone to put his arm around them and just go, fella, right, you need to kind of step back a little bit and be told how it looks.
And I think break the Meghan spell.
Yeah.
The problem you've got, I believe that it's a cult-like scenario whereby she's captured Harry.
Yeah.
What's she done? She's taken him away from his country of birth, away from his family, away from his friends.
Yeah.
He's stuck there in that mansion in California. Yeah. He's living in a bubble.
So he's got his kids, right? Won't want to lose his children, as any man wouldn't. So that keeps him there as well. And he is, I believe, utterly isolated. And you could almost say there's an element of brainwashing going on here, because if you actually just go through what you've outlined, he has been removed. That is how cults behave. If you look at cults around the world, they remove people from the bosom of their family, their friends, they isolate them, then that person is only subjected to one viewpoint continually. Pressure, roll into that the affection that he has for his children, that's going to keep him there. He won't want to lose that. I mean, it's an awful situation to be in. And
Tom Bower, who knows his onions, of course, just written another book about the Sussexes, has argued in his book that Meghan wasn't just the driving force behind Megxit, but that she used the idea of victimhood to convince Harry that he needed to leave the UK, that he was being treated so badly. Well, cry me a river, because this is a guy that grew up in mansions, castles and palaces.
Let's say the unsayable, shall we? You know, what's tragic, what happened to Diana, she was no saint when it came to media manipulation.
100%.
All right, you know, I know photojournalists and picture editors of the past, you know, the idea that she was somehow snapped walking from her car to go to the gym or whatever purely by accident was absolute guff. She tipped off photographers to say, I'm going to be here, all right, you want the pictures? Right, you need to be here 6:50 in the morning at this gym in Chelsea because you can get your snaps. Right, all of that was going on. So
I do the same, by the way. I just let the Daily Mail know that I'd be at Greg's the Baker's at 11 a.m. this morning.
I've seen pictures of you putting your bins out as well.
Yeah.
So obviously you tip them off when you're taking out your recycling.
In my dressing gown.
In your dressing gown.
With my very
awful flip-flops you wear.
Correct.
Right.
And the dressing gown is just, can I just say, loosely tied.
On purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, let's not
pretend
that Diana was, you know, this saint, because she played the game as much as anyone else.
Most
but
definitely.
ultimately, you strip it down, he lost his mum in horrific circumstances at a very young age, and ultimately that makes him vulnerable. And I do believe that Meghan is playing on that vulnerability.
I have found the Victoria Albert post on X, and it reads as follows, Duncan, and I think it makes for chilling reading for Harry. Lawyers, this is in relation to Sentebale suing Harry, lawyers generally try to dissuade and discourage clients from filing lawsuits due to the eye-watering costs, the high stakes and the risks involved. A decision to move ahead suggests there is financial support and, wait for it, significant evidence.
Yeah.
Harry's in trouble. I mean, if he loses this, and like you said, he's also suing the owners of the Daily Mail at the moment.
Yep.
If he loses that, first of all, he'll be on the hook for millions.
Yep.
And yes, he's working alongside Elton John in his case against the Daily Mail. Well, Elton John
can afford
is close to being a US dollar billionaire.
Yeah.
This is small change.
Yeah.
It's not small change for Harry.
Yeah. And what happens, so if he does lose, and you say he's on the hook for, you know, potentially millions of dollars, etc., if he loses both those cases, where's he going to get the money from? Because the income streams are pretty much exhausted now, aren't they? Because, you know, the TV programmes haven't really worked.
No.
You know, he's knocked out the book. Well, that's the book. The book's done. What is left in order to get some cash in?
Well, I'm trying to work out Harry's income at the moment, and he was commanding upwards of $1 million for a speaking fee when he left the royal family. His current rate is 50k. Now, that's money that you and I could only dream of.
Yeah.
But for Harry, that doesn't touch the sides. Once you've paid your management and your public relations people and your accommodation and transport and your tax.
Yeah. Well, let's put it into context. You mentioned Elton
mortgage
John
for a month.
You know, you can get Elton John to play at your party if you wanted to, right? Elton John would still do a private gig for you.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you a couple of £1 million.
Correct.
Right? Harry, you can get him for 50 grand for a speaking engagement. So, you know, if they lose these court cases, Elton will just go, oh, I'll just write the cheque, you know.
It's a couple of corporate gigs and he's done.
Yeah. Harry, it's just like, what am I going to do now?
Most definitely. How do you think this court case is going to affect his relationship with his father? Because the king doesn't want to see his son in the dock, does he?
No, and I mentioned earlier, the reputation of the royal family has taken a battering because of Andrew. Charles will be of the position rightly, which is Harry, just leave it. Just leave it. The best thing you can do in order to repair your own reputation and the relationship between me and you is to just pipe down and be quiet. And that's when the healing might start to happen. But I don't think he's capable.
It's very sad, isn't it? And very briefly, what's your appraisal of the Sussexes' marriage? Do you think that notwithstanding their financial and career problems, they're still in love?
Wow. I'd like to think they are, but I would suggest that the current behaviour suggests that it's functional.
Wow. What a devastating line. That was a straight answer to a straight question. Elite level journalism and broadcasting from Duncan Barks, who I'm delighted to say is staying with us. Star of Talk, of course, and broadcaster of many decades. Folks, so much more to come. It is 6:59. I want to ask you a simple question. Right? We've got an enfeebled military. The country is provably less safe under Labour. Does Keir Starmer represent you? 0344 499 1000. Talk Breakfast. Lots more to come.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 7. Top of the morning, lovely to have your company. Mark Dolan with you on Talk Breakfast. I've got to say, we're in a 2-week bonanza. I'm going to be on this amazing network every day for the next fortnight, looking after Ian Collins from 1 till 4 every weekday of this week. Looking forward to that. I will remain on Talk Breakfast as well, because my commitment to you on a Saturday and a Sunday is 100%. So much to get through today. Breaking this morning. Deal or no deal? The US Vice President, J.D. Vance, walks away from negotiations with Iran. Is it time for Donald to step in and finish the job? Shock as thousands of migrants from overseas, including places like Afghanistan, coming into the UK on a Ukrainian visa. What the hell is going on? We have the inside story. And it's the interview they all wanted in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. The Daily Mail's Robert Hardman joins us to discuss his new book about Queen Elizabeth II. What would Elizabeth make of King Charles's reign? What would she make of Harry and Meghan? What would she make of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? And is she our greatest ever Briton? Robert Hardman, the Daily Mail journalist and author of a brand new book about Queen Elizabeth II, live on the show in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. Plus, Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. You won't want to miss it. Britain is based on fairness, but the policies of this current government are anything but. Now, Engineer Dave, you can fade out that music because my fader has just gone in the blink. It's all kicked off. Folks, can I tell you, I've got a brilliant team with me today. The executive producer of the show is Phil Dave, and I can't lie, since he came in, I'm sounding so much better. Dave Spencer is not around at the moment. He's, of course, the original executive producer of the show. Dean, I mean, do you know what? I'm going to stop talking and get on with the show. It is 5 minutes past 7. Let's have a look at some front pages. Sunday Times. Greens vote surge would cost 3 cabinet ministers their seats, poll says. US and Iran in historic peace talks. And Richard Tice's firm broke law over unpaid £91,000 tax. Sunday Mirror, Wes Streeting exclusive. Corridor care makes me feel ashamed. Health Secretary vows to clean up Tory NHS mess and accelerate reform. Daily Star Sunday. History-making Artemis 2 crew hit bullseye landing. Super splashing great is the headline. Sunday Express, U-turn of all U-turns. Kemi Badenoch claims victory, slamming spineless PM over Chagos deal. Mail on Sunday, Le humiliation. Once mighty Navy faces begging French fleet for help to patrol our own waters as PM is mocked for Chagos deal U-turn. It wasn't even a U-turn, by the way. Starmer can't even claim that he's been decisive and got rid of the proposals to hand over the Chagos Islands. Donald said no. Sunday Telegraph, Phillipson betrayed women on rights law and fuel protests loom as diesel hits £2 a litre. And front page of The Sun on Sunday, a very good friend of mine, a very good friend of this network. TV legend in hospital, Eamonn's Katie, I'm praying. The legendary Eamonn Holmes has suffered a stroke and we all wish him well. He's a good friend of mine. He's an extraordinary broadcaster, a legend of UK media and a lovely, lovely man. Eamonn, we wish you well. Joining me live in the studio talking of great broadcasters, I'm delighted to have talk star and journalist Duncan Barks. Good morning, Duncan.
Morning.
And down the line, on the farm, we have former Conservative MP and now very successful farmer, Neil Parish. Hello, Neil.
Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you all.
Very good to see you as well, Neil. There are many on the right that have struggled with Donald Trump's war against Iran. Has the orange one bitten off more than he can chew in the Middle East?
I think it may have been a good idea for him to thought it through a little bit more about how he gets out rather than how he gets in. But I am still very much one of those that thinks Iran needed sorting out. And I think the thing is now he's going to have to make the decision, you know, is he going to sort of concede really and let Iran run the talks on how to get a ceasefire, or is he going to still be very strong? And I think also, I mean, really at this stage, having dropped so many bombs, it would be good if they could actually go in and get that enriched uranium out of Iran once and for all. And I think, you know, I personally think the job needs to be finished. I'm not sure blowing up all their infrastructure is the right way, but I think there are ways. I mean, I think he should take one of the islands there and actually show Iran that America has the force and the capability, which they do have. The Straits of Hormuz do need to be opened, but at the moment, you see, the Iranians appear to have enough weapons left just to cause problems, and they seem to be running the show, don't they, from looking at it from a distance, and I don't think that suits us, and it doesn't suit Donald Trump, and certainly at the end of the day, as far as we are in the West, the Iranians degraded and not having a nuclear weapon and also not being able to supply their satellites to fire missiles all over the place has got to be the right policy. But how Donald finishes it quite, I don't really know.
Now, Neil, you were the Member of Parliament for Tiverton and Honiton for over 12 years, so you're used to representing your constituents. You understand the concerns of ordinary, hard-working Brits. How would you explain to my viewers and listeners why it's so important that Iran is dealt with? Because people listening will just think, well, my petrol's gone up, inflation's going to go back up. What's in it for me?
Yeah, I can understand that, and I think the government needs to do more by knocking the VAT off of fuel, because they're taking, you know, they're taking 10 or 12p now extra in VAT, so they're profiteering more than the petrol companies. So, but I think we do have to explain that in the end, you could not have a rogue state like Iran with nuclear weapons. They seem to be able to prove that the missiles can actually go further than we thought they had the capability of. So if they had nuclear weapons, they would threaten the world. And of course, also, they may well use them because, you know, we hate in a way, nuclear weapons, but they have acted in many respects as a deterrent. And what you don't want is a state like Iran to have it. They also still say, and Israel is far from perfect, and I don't support everything that Netanyahu has done, but you have to remember that Iran says that they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Now, if I was representing Tiverton and Honiton, and I had Scotland saying that they want to wipe the UK, England off the map, you would actually have to do something about it. And I think it's right that he's done something about it. Has he gone about it entirely the right way? I don't suppose any of us would consider that so. But on the other hand, it was a job that had to be done. But I just hope now that he finishes the job, because we're going to have a lot of pain over fuel, prices. We're feeling a lot of pain. So for goodness sake, let's finish the job. And that's my plea, really, to Donald, if he's listening.
Well, there you go. We can debate, can't we, Duncan, whether or not moving on Iran was the right thing to do. But given what's happened, Neil's right. Finish the job.
Yeah, and it's a case of what does that look like and how far does Donald Trump go with finishing the job. I mean, I think the next, and we talked about this in the last hour, the key thing that the eyes of the world will be on is what Trump says next on Truth Social. We'll get a very clear indication about whether that means he's prepared to negotiate further and have more talks, or whether or not he's going to finish the job and wipe out more infrastructure in Iran and indeed, other targets in the country. But I make the point again that I made in the last hour. Whilst all of this is going on, the people of this country continue to suffer because the cost of living is going through the roof. And, everyone who listens to talk, alarm clock Britain, as we call people, getting out of bed at 6 a.m, getting in their vans because they're plumbers or chippies or sparkies or whatever, the cost of diesel in particular, if you're driving a van at the moment, is getting to the point where people are going to go, I can't actually afford to work anymore.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a key point, isn't it? Meanwhile, what about this for a front page in the Mail on Sunday, Neil Parish? Le humiliation. Once mighty navy faces begging French fleet for help to patrol our own waters, as PM is mocked for Chagos deal U-turn, with Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the party that you support, Duncan, saying that Britain is at its weakest militarily for 400 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to say to you, we the Conservatives, when we were in power, did not spend enough on defence. We also haven't. I don't know what's wrong with the governing of the defence industry, if you like, and the Defence Department, because we don't seem to target the money properly. I think it's not just the number of ships, is it? I think we actually probably need to stick to a smaller number of ships, but they need to be ready. And they need to be functioning. And if they're aircraft carriers, they need to have planes on them. All of those things are necessary. So I think the idea that we can have a huge navy is probably out of the question. But we can have a prepared navy, and we can have an effective navy. And if you're going to try and start stopping Russian boats coming through our waters, for goodness sake, have the navy there prepared and able to do it. Otherwise, don't threaten to do it. And this is the trouble with Starmer all the time, to be honest with you, is he comes up with a good idea, and I thought it was a good idea to stop these Russian ships. He then gets sort of cold feet over the legal side of it, because the trouble is he's not really a prime minister and a politician. He's still a lawyer, really. And the trouble is lawyers are okay, but they're always weighing up the legal position one way or the other. And I think that is his real problem. So the Navy needs to be sorted. I think we need to concentrate on getting a number of ships, and I'm not going to state the number, but they need to be ready, they need to be up to date, and they need to have the best equipment on them. And that is where we fail. I mean, that's where the Americans have, the latest equipment, and they have a lot of ships, but they're also, very much to date. I think that's our problem, isn't it? It's not only the number of ships we've got, they're getting old, they're very often in dock, and that sort of thing is just not effective. I mean, I think we'll probably in the long run, you know, and I expect lots of listeners will throw up their hands in horror, and I didn't know that I'd ever say this because I've always been at war with the French, you know, not physically, but when I was in Parliament, I never saw eye to eye with the French. But like I said, it is a case that we will probably have to pull our resources because we've got to be effective at the end of the day. I mean, and Putin must sort of laugh, really, mustn't he, when Britain says, you know, we'll do this, that and the other. And I think that is for everybody listening. I think that is where we get so cross, don't we? We are still a proud nation. We're still an able nation. We're still a hard-working nation. And we would like to have armed forces and navy who are very good, actually, in their personnel and training. We would like them to have the equipment, and we would like them to be effective, wouldn't we? So that we can at least hold our heads halfway up, if not the whole way up.
Duncan, our question this morning is a simple one. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? Will Starmer fix this problem?
I'd like to just pick up on what Neil said, that, you know, fundamentally we don't have a leader as our Prime Minister. We have a manager who looks at a spreadsheet, I suspect, and goes, oh, we can't do that because of international law. Look, you know, the idea that you have Russian vessels sailing through our channel, in one particular example, escorted by a Russian warship, is preposterous, and we don't do anything about it. We don't do anything about it. And you can just imagine the conversation with Keir Starmer, Lord Hardman, and Hardman just going, well, if we board these vessels, we might be breaking international law. Sometimes you have to go, it's not about international law, it's about what is right and what is the proper thing to do for the security of this nation. And when you talk about that particular example of, you know, the shadow fleet and occasionally it being escorted by a Russian warship, you know, you have to do something about it. And if you don't do something about it, you've got Putin, who is just laughing at us. I mean, you know, I'd like to, with respect, just pick Neil up on one point. We should have a big navy. We should return to the numbers that we had in the 1980s, because at the moment we have assets around the world, including the Falklands, that if Argentina decided to try and regain the Falklands, we wouldn't be able to man some kind of fleet, a task force to get down there and take on the Argentinians to reclaim the Falkland Islands. We simply don't have the vessels. Fundamentally, we are a maritime nation. Fundamentally, our sea is our last line of defence. We need as many vessels as possible.
Most definitely. And Neil, how much of a problem is it that the Prime Minister is a former human rights lawyer? How does that colour and shape his approach to defence?
Yeah, I think it is a real problem because I think he weighs up the legal situation all the time. Rather, you see, I always say apology. I mean, you could love or hate Boris, but he would go by the seat of his pants, you know, and sometimes he got it right and sometimes he didn't. But you need somebody like that because they've got to take risks, you see. The trouble with Keir Starmer, he is risk adverse. And that, in a way, is one of the worst politicians you can get, because you've got to make a decision, you've got to stick to it, and you've got to get on with it. And like I said, if you do sort of crack a few eggs when you make an omelette, as the saying goes, if you do actually, I mean, some of this law that he may or may not break is very weak. Nobody's really going to do anything about it, and we've got to show the Russians that we mean business, you know. Yeah. So let's not sort of pussyfoot around, and that's what he does. And I think he wrings his hands. I think his other problem is that you know, some prime ministers, and probably Boris was one of those, that didn't read enough and didn't take enough detail. I think the trouble with Keir Starmer is he reads too much. I think takes in too much detail. You know, I mean, I was a politician, I was a great believer in get up there and stand up and say what you've got to say and get on with it. And as long as you reasonably write, fine, every now and again you make a mistake. I think people accept that, and what they want is somebody actually to stand up for something. And what the, you know, I mean, I know it's been repeated all the time, but what really does Starmer stand for? Even if I disagreed with the man, you know, I mean, I'm a farmer. They got no agricultural policy. They don't give a damn about producing food. They seem to be imported if they haven't got it. They want to cover the area in solar panels, and that's the end of it, you know. And so it is really crazy. And when it comes to defence, I really think he makes the right talk, doesn't he? He goes over on the international stage where he's reasonably effective. But when it comes to domestic policy, when it comes to actually having a navy and armed forces to actually do what he says he's going to do, be able to do what he's going to do, it's just not there. And then, of course, at the last minute, the lawyers come in and say, well, Prime Minister, I mean, it's like Yes Minister, isn't it? You know, the chief advisor comes in and say, well, Prime Minister, that would be a very risky decision, you know, and you'll be a very brave man to do that. Remember, Hacker used to say, brave? What's that? And I think that's how Starmer reacts, to be honest with you. And I think really he does not make a Prime Minister. I mean, I'm a Tory, yeah, fair enough. But to be honest with you, I would give the man credit if it was due, but it really isn't due, is it? And everybody is absolutely fed up with him. And it'd be interesting to see, naturally, further than your question, Mark, but it'd be interesting to see what happens after the local elections, won't it?
Well, yes, and Neil, you're out of the House of Commons now. You're not a tribal personality, and if Starmer was doing a good job, I know that you would acknowledge that. The opposite appears to be the case. Duncan, last word on this.
I think Neil's nailed it, because we don't have a leader, do we? Leaders know what they believe in, what they stand for, and Starmer, I think, his fundamental issue is he doesn't know what he believes in unless someone tells him, or his union backers tell him, or he sees that some opinion polling comes out that might make him a tad more popular. He's not driven by any conviction, and I think fundamentally that will be his undoing.
He decides nothing, even though he's the Prime Minister that enjoys a large majority. So Donald Trump decides what happens to Chagos. The backbenchers decide what happens to disability benefits. The Cabinet decide whether we support the war in Iran, because, by the way, here's the great imponderable. Although Starmer is now crowing about the fact that he didn't back this war, it's my understanding he wanted to allow US planes to refuel on at British sites, and it was his cabinet that said no.
Listen, you know, you don't have to go too far back in history. Successful politicians are leaders, right? Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, Boris Johnson, all very successful politicians. Nigel Farage, a leader. He knows what he thinks about stuff. You don't get that with Keir Starmer, and it will be his unravelling.
Most definitely. I'm delighted to say that, of course, Duncan will be returning to the airwaves very shortly. He is a host on Talk, as well as a regular pundit as well. My thanks to Duncan Barks.
Always a pleasure.
Go and have an excellent Sunday. You're taking 40 winks, and then you're off to some kind of outlet called Wagamama.
Yeah, I have a teenage daughter who's back from university. We're going for bao buns and cold beer. What else is there to do on a Sunday?
Can I say, for many years now, Duncan, I've been a fan of your dumplings.
Yeah, my dumplings are quite renowned.
They are melt in the mouth, so enjoy them this afternoon. Knock yourself out.
Yeah, can I mention my sausage podcast very quickly?
You've got to.
Prick with a Fork. If you love sausages, it's on YouTube. I eat sausages, I sample sausages, I wang on about sausages. Prick with a Fork on YouTube. Everything sausage related. Subscribe, won't cost you a penny.
He's not a silly sausage.
No.
In fact, sausages... Oh, he is a nice one. Sausage is the ultimate superfood. Duncan Barks, the ultimate super host here on Talk. Listen, much more to come. Neil Parish is staying with us. All he's got to do is milking a couple of cows, and then he's back on air. I've got a simple question for you this morning. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? Your call's next. Don't go anywhere.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, folks, it's the interview they all wanted in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. The Daily Mail's Robert Hardman joins us live on today's show to discuss his new book about Queen Elizabeth II. What would she make of King Charles's reign? What would she make of Harry and Meghan and of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? A very special interview about Queen Elizabeth II, a Talk Breakfast exclusive at 9:30. Harry's being sued by his own charity. Here's a voice note on that from Rob.
Regarding Prince Harry, it's about time he got a taste of his own medicine, that twerp. He's absolutely just trapped, isn't he, in a toxic, vile relationship with that awful plastic woman, Meghan. And he's terrified of leaving her or taking any action against her because she will spill the beans on everything about the royals. She's got him exactly where she wants him, and that is stuck with her. That is what narcissists do. They just isolate someone from their family and friends, as you've just discussed previously on this programme. Yeah, he's between a rock and a hard place because he's scared stiff of her, because believe me, if he did dump her, she would go to the press. She would write books all about him and most probably give away all sorts of royal secrets. So, yeah, he's got himself in the right situation, and it's his own fault. He was warned. Thank you. Great show. Bye.
Thank you, Rob. What a succinct overview of the Sussex situation. Brilliant. We love the voice notes. Keep them coming. We love the texts as well. Good morning, Mark. It's very simple. The following things have to be non-negotiable in the Middle East. Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Iran cannot be allowed control of the Straits of Hormuz. Iran cannot be allowed the blackmail inflicted on the rest of the world to enable it to continue to spread global terrorism as it has been. Dave in Bristol, I'd love you to be at those negotiations. That is a great set of red lines. This from Suze, who says, good morning. Regarding diesel costs, there are no buses where I live, so I depend on my car. But worse than the petrol pump prices is the cost of heating oil, which has exploded. Time for a general election. Ian in Oldham, good morning, Mark. The trouble with lawyers in any other walk of life is that they are professional liars. At any one time, half are trying to prosecute the innocent or trying to get the guilty acquitted. Very well put. Brian in Lincoln, good morning, Mark. The Tories and Labour have allowed our armed forces and our economy to be destroyed so they can justify rejoining the EU, saying that rejoining the EU will fix all of these issues. Mick, whilst Putin's warship and supply ghost ships were sailing through the channel, our Navy had no ships to deal with any of this. And Jim says, what does Neil think of the Greens? As I say, they are obsessed with Gaza and want people to drive at 55 miles an hour. Yesterday, I hear, they want to ban horse racing and the Grand National. It was so good, the Grand National. I got the winner. And also, they don't want people to go on a plane or on holiday. We'll have to walk or go on a bike. Jim, thank you for that. Well, with me is the aforementioned Neil Parish, ex-Conservative MP and now farmer. Hello, Neil.
Good morning again.
Very good to have you. Neil, let's take a call on whether Britain is safe in Starmer's hands. This is Paul in Crawley. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Neil. Shame that Duncan's left because I was loving what he was saying, but he's on a jolly, isn't he?
He's been brilliant.
But the thing is, I just wanted to say about the Royal Navy. I mean, take a deep breath. I mean, apparently and I've got this information from the government, from Google and from Jane's fighting ships, okay? So pretty standard. Anybody could get this information, including our enemies, if you like. Apparently we've got 2 subs, 5 warships and 3 auxiliary active on employment at this moment in time. Now, Neil said just a moment ago, before you went to the break, we can't stop the Russians coming through the channel. I mean, what have we got in Gibraltar? I mean, we took 3 weeks to get a ship down to Cyprus. Why haven't we got anything in Gibraltar that could have been in there in days? I think it's disgraceful. And also about the army, you can get them in Wembley Stadium, for goodness sake. John Healey, when he was bumbling a couple of weeks ago or a week ago about he didn't even know how many ships we have on active service, and he hid behind, oh, well, I can't disclose that, because he didn't know. If one of my managers, when I was employed in a bank, I had one of my managers reported back to me about how many customers does my bank have, and he said, well, I'm not really sure. He would have been sacked. Unbelievable.
Most definitely. It's a good, very fair point, isn't it, Neil?
It really is, yes, and I think what this is highlighted is not only the lack of ships we have, but like I said, the ready for action these ships are. And I think in the first instance, this is what the Secretary of State for Defence and the government should be doing, is actually the ships that we've got, for goodness sake, get them ready for action so that when a Russian warship comes through, we can actually go out and stop them and actually board them if necessary. All of these things need to be done in order to show Putin we need business. So I think, like I said, the first priority, if I was Secretary of State for Defence now, would be very much to actually get to the Navy in and say, right, what do you need for all these ships to make them seaworthy? How do we make sure that they are manned and ready for action? And that is the key, because at the moment it is an absolute nonsense. Because there's no point in having any ships, to be honest with you, Mark, if they're not ready for action. You need these ships ready, and I think that's key to it. And the Secretary of State, John Healey, did not know how many ships we had. And surely, if you are Secretary of State for Defence, that may be, I would have thought, a question that you should be able to answer. I'm being very sarcastic, but that is where, and it's worrying, isn't it, really? Not only is it sort of funny, if you like, it's not really funny, because if he doesn't know how many ships we've got, how does he know they're ready, basically? And he's not asking the right questions, is he? And so, now I know it's easy to criticise, and certainly the Tories, we didn't get it all right either, so I'm not sort of sitting here crowing. I think I'm just worried that nobody is getting to grips with what's happening, and I think, in the first instance, get in there, sort it out, find out how we get our ships ready, and for goodness sake, it can't be months. You see, this is the trouble. When we were going to send a warship, weren't we, to the Middle East at one stage? Well, I don't know whether it ever got there, because as far as I remember, it was being fitted out for most of the time. I really don't. I don't know if you know whether it ever got there. Do you? Because, like I said, it took forever to get it ready. I know.
Yeah, it actually remains a mystery as to its current location. Paul, thank you so much for a brilliant call. Neil, my audience are loving your contribution. Do you think you could stick around for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, my cattle will complain to you that they're hungry, but I suspect they're getting bigger now, so they can cope with waiting a little time. Don't worry.
All right. Well, listen, we'll hang on to you for a couple of minutes. We're taking your calls next. We're in the company of Neil Parish, former Conservative MP. He's out of the Commons, which means he can be honest and say what he really thinks. Neil Parish, and your calls next. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast, and it is 7:37. Coming up, King Charles's butler on the news that Harry is to be sued by his own charity. That is Grant Harold in just a few minutes' time, and Dolan's dispatch at 9 a.m, plus many more treats that lie ahead. I'm delighted to say with me down the line is Neil Parish, former Conservative MP and current farmer, of course. And Neil, let's take a call if we can from Elliot in Bushy. Elliot, how safe is Britain in Starmer's hands?
Well, it isn't safe. Let's come straight to the point. I'm fed up hearing all these people tiptoe around. It's not safe under Starmer's hands. It wasn't safe under the Tories. Both parties have decimated our forces. But the key thing that no one is talking about is the people in charge. That is to say, the armed chiefs, the First Lord of the Navy, the General Chief of Staff. These people are employed as part of our military forces. They are paid to do a job. Where have they been over the last 20 years or more when our forces have been allowed to be completely eviscerated by successive and stupid, idiotic governments? Only now, Mark, are they coming to the table to shout and say, oh, isn't it terrible? Well, do you know what? It was terrible 20 years ago. It was terrible 30 years ago. And we have allowed this to happen because successive governments and those in charge of our armed forces haven't had the BALLS to come up and say what the issue is. We've had, I believe, on your radio station, I've heard him speak. I have great respect for him. I may have his name wrong. Lord Dannatt,
yeah,
is it?
Lord Dannatt, yeah.
That's right. And he was an MP. Okay, he's wonderful what he's saying. Where was he 20 years ago? Where were the people actually in charge of our armed forces as a professional day-to-day work? What were they telling the government? Well, I never heard them. And if they were speaking, they certainly didn't speak loud enough, or I'm just deaf. I think it's a disgrace. And we have allowed this to happen. We are completely defenceless. Your previous caller said fill Wembley Stadium or couldn't. You'd be lucky to get the front row filled. And I've just heard that ship, Dragon or Dagon or whatever it was called, it still hasn't reached Cyprus. Do you know why, Mark? You're in the news. You'll know better than me. Because apparently, and excuse my graphical detail, I understand there's something wrong with the toilets or the latrines. Oh, give me a break, really. And we have our defense secretary saying, we see you, Putin. We see you, we hear you. Yeah, well, we hear you, Mr. Defense Secretary, and you are a complete waste of time. It's too terrible. All these people, including the chiefs of staff, should be, in my view, I was in charge of the country, they should be done for treason. It's absolute treason. And in the old days, not that I'm for it, you'd be hung for treason. It's a betrayal of our nation and our values and everything we stood up for. It's incredible. And it's a disgrace on our forefathers who have fought for this country and those later soldiers who died for our country when we contributed to such events as the Gulf War and so on and forth, and so on and so on.
Well, look, very well put, Elliot. Your reaction, Neil Parish?
Well, I think Elliot's got many very good points there. I think that all the time that I was in Parliament, the trouble is not only was it what we spent on defence, it was how we spent it. Whenever we had procurement, it was always over budget and it was always late. And this has happened under successive governments. So therefore, like I say, there is, and Elliot's right, there is a need for a root and branch reform, not only of, like I said, the amount we spend, but how we spend it, and we deliver it, and we focus deficit, and we do deliver on certain projects, be it ships, be it tanks, whatever it might be, and let's have a sort of it's not only an armed forces fit for purpose, it's also a Ministry of Defence. Because I mean, I had in the constituency a company called Supercat, who were very good at doing armed vehicles and reinforcing Land Rovers and all those things, and they used to actually do the maintenance out of the contract, and they were very reliable. But very often the Ministry of Defence would find reasons why they weren't locally, and in Britain the contracts weren't delivered by our own companies. And so, you know, there is a root and branch thing here where I am absolutely certain we could get our own companies, we could make a lot of our defence equipment and then service it, and I think it would be a lot quicker, I think it would be a lot cheaper, and it would be a lot more effective. So there is a lot to be done. Not, you know, we can all pontificate about it, but it's not just the amount of money we spend, it's how we spend it and how we deliver it. And I'm not just saying this now because I made points like that in Parliament when I was there. Why on earth can't we deliver on time, on budget, and why on earth can't we use much more of our own industry and companies to deliver it? Partly because I had a very good company in my own constituency, admittedly, but you know, we need a service, and it can be delivered.
Most definitely. Briefly, Elliot, if you can, you get the last word.
Well, everything that your guest says is right. And I was simply saying that the whole thing is an absolute visceral embarrassment. If you look, if I may very briefly say in the interest of time, if you look at Starmer, he's just gone out to the UAE, all our friends and allies. We couldn't get a damn ship off to Cyprus. Now he wants to claim we, this country, didn't do a thing. Whether you agreed or not with Trump, that's another matter. The fact that we didn't even let our own NATO-run or UK British forces allow our greatest ally, whatever you think, to use our landing strips to come in and take off. I have never felt so embarrassed. And for that man, how dare he, in my name and all of us, go to the UAE or wherever, he can go to the North Pole as far as I'm concerned, and say, you, Mr. Starmer, have done nothing. Your defence secretary's done nothing, as did the previous Tory party. I'm saying again, an absolute betrayal of our nation, our country, and those who have fought for this country. My God, I can hear them screaming from the grave. I think it's terrible. And the terrible thing is that it'll take years to get this right. And I don't believe it'll ever be made right because we don't have the will. The West doesn't have the will. We hate wars. Of course, wars are awful. But you know what? However bad it is in the West, however much we criticize our own Western democratic way of life, my final point is, whatever our historical good points and bad points, Mark, you know what? Compared to what I see across in China, Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, it may be not so great here, but until you show me and all of us something better, I'm prepared to stick to what we've got here. And that's the point. And no one is prepared to stand up for our truth, our justice, our heritage, and our values, because our values are not valued by successive governments. I think it's terrible. I can hear my late parents who were involved in the war screaming from the grave, as with all those that have fallen for this great country. It's too terrible. I have no more words to say. I think Starmer and all of them, and including Cameron and Blair and all of them, should be done for treason. My final point, and I promise it is final, I hear we spend $100 billion on welfare for people coming into the country that we don't know anything about. We don't know who they are. It's quite incredible. But about half that on our defence. Well, I rest my case.
What a powerful call, Elliot. Thank you for that. My thanks to Neil Parish, former Tory MP, now farmer. Neil, we'll let you get back to the livestock and we'll catch up soon. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? It is 7:47. This is Talk Breakfast.
Is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Britain's armed forces in crisis. Here's a voice note from Michael.
In the 1970s, my dad was posted to RAF Gibraltar, and as a child, I was able to go on many Royal Navy ships as they came into port, including destroyers, frigates, and even the Ark Royal. I have fond memories of this, and also of the Royal Air Force aircraft stationed there. In those days, the Spanish border was closed, and while there was no fresh milk on the rock, my dad's friend would fly maritime reconnaissance on a Shackleton from Lossiemouth and bring me fresh milk. Those were the days when Britain actually meant something.
A devastating but important voice note. Michael, thank you. A fresh nightmare for Prince Harry as he is sued by the charity that he co-founded in the memory of his late mother, Diana. Let's get reaction from a man who knows Prince Harry intimately well, the former King's butler, Grant Harold, who is the author of a brand new best-selling book entitled The Royal Butler, My Remarkable Life of Royal Service. Good morning, Grant.
Good morning.
And it's remarkable that Harry's being sued by his own charity.
It's quite surprising. Well, it is quite surprising. I mean, this is a charity he founded, I believe, in 2006. And of course, I'm sure we remember the other year was when he obviously walked away. And then there was a bit of a kind of, well, a lot in the media as to the reasons as to why he'd walked away. And of course, I think it's related to that is why the charity is saying that it's somehow, I think it's damaged its reputation or it's caused problems for it. And that's why they've decided to do this.
Most definitely. And there's a worrying post, Grant, from a journalist that you will know well, Victoria Arbiter, who is the daughter of the legendary royal journalist Dickie Arbiter, who was the Queen's head of press back in the day. And she's posted the following, which I think will shock you, Grant. She said, lawyers generally try to dissuade and discourage clients from filing lawsuits due to the eye-watering costs, the high stakes and the risks involved. A decision to move ahead by Sentebale suggests there is financial support and significant evidence. This could be quite serious for Harry.
It could be. I think what's also sad, and of course she's absolutely right. I mean, but what's also sad is the charity is going to be using this money for this case. And, you know, with charities, you want to think that the money you put into them is used for good purposes and not obviously for legal cases. I'm assuming that it'll be used towards the legal case. But of course, it's not good news for Harry because, you know, so this is a charity that he founded, you know, over 20 years ago. And he was very proud of having that association. And remember, it was connected to his mother, obviously, because it was to support AIDS and HIV. So it is sad. And I'm sure that it's the last thing that he would, you know, even though he has had quite a few court cases, I'm sure this is one he could do without.
Well, yes, and Sentebale should have been a good news story for Harry Grant. Great PR, because it's an excellent cause. I would encourage my viewers and listeners to donate to Sentebale because it takes care of children and families impacted by poverty, hunger and HIV. So it's a tremendous organisation and it still does good work. But yet it's become bad PR for Harry yet again.
It has become bad PR for Harry. As you said, it's yet another one to add to the list. I suppose the positive of this is we're talking about it, and you know, with any charity, people are going to be looking it up, and hopefully, you just said people will donate to it because you know that's the whole reason he had set it up. I also noted that that it's both Prince Harry and somebody called Mark Dyer, and for anyone that may not know who that was an equerry to the now King when he was Prince of Wales, and then he became a sort of custodian / guardian for William and Harry in the younger days. So obviously that relationship continued, and obviously he got involved in the charity when it was set up, which would have been around about, say, 2006 when Matt was very much on the scene.
Most definitely. And are you shocked that Harry has got into this public war of words with the woman that now runs the charity grant, Dr. Sophie Chandauka? Because Harry was actually admonished by the Charity Commission for allowing his row with Dr. Sophie Chandauka to be public.
Yeah, that's the other problem is, you know, it's quite extraordinary that this became such a public thing. I mean, you know, we all have fallouts and with organisations, and again, charities probably have similar things happen, but they don't normally become public. And I think, again, this is what the charity has taken issue with, is the fact that they're saying, obviously, it should become public. That has caused, it has an impact on the charity. Of course, it has an impact on the charity. But I am quite surprised because, again, you know, if you look at his grandmother, the late Queen, I don't ever remember her kind of, not that often, very rarely publicly having kind of issues with people. And I think there was only ever 2 court cases that she had in her lifetime, to give you an idea. So she was the opposite. She wanted to kind of avoid confrontation and situations and resolve them privately behind the palace doors, where Harry's got a very different approach. I think he feels that kind of voicing his upset and concerns to the public is going to get people on his side. But it doesn't seem to work. It seems to kind of go against him.
Now, you admire the King. You were close to the King. You were his butler. You respect the man, Grant. What do you think he'll make of headlines as he wakes up this morning about his youngest son being sued for libel in the High Court?
You can almost see him, hear him kind of going, you know, God, now what kind of thing, you know, because it's yet another negative headline. And this is what, with everything going on, with due respect in the royal family, this is another headline that he won't want because, you know, Matt, we've had so many, can I say, negative headlines about the royal family setting over the last 2 years through no fault of their own, of course. You know, of course, we're talking about health, we're talking about family fallouts, all sorts of things going on. And it's quite sad because I'm sure the King must be thinking there must be a day that I can, or a week or a month, I can actually get up, read the papers, and it's positive news for the family.
Most definitely. And his brother William will look at these headlines and he'll likely be saying to his father, see, Pa, this is why we cannot trust this guy. He's just trouble with a capital T.
I think the dangerous thing is, I think what I feel William is worried about, that if they do try to fix and heal the relationship, that Harry will continue to kind of openly discuss it. It's a little bit, with the greatest respect, it's a bit like President Trump, you know, when, you know, there's been obviously with the state visit coming up, and there's a few concerns about how, you know, he's quite vocal and he likes to kind of let everyone know what's going on. And Harry seems to have the same kind of leaf. He kind of seems to do the same thing. You know, whenever there's any kind of private conversations or anything, he seems to tell everyone. And that's what the King and William don't want. They want the privacy. They like the privacy. I mean, they're in the public spotlight most of the time, so the very little privacy they get, they like to hold on to.
Most definitely. And the point about the royals is you're discreet. You're not an open book.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what they try to do. I mean, you know, historically, famously, royals were even more reserved and discreet. And the access we get today to the royal family is even for me, who grew up admiring and loving the royal family and wanting to get that insight, more insight, we get a lot of it today. But, you know, there's only so much they can give. And the privacy that they do have, they want to keep some of that.
Grant, you also don't have an axe to grind with Harry. I know that you were very fond of him in the past. You've told me on this show that one of the most surprising aspects of Harry in recent years is how he's lost touch with his closest friends. And that's a damning piece of information if you lose your friends.
Yeah.
But are you surprised by what's happened to Harry since he left the royal family, the trajectory of his life? Does it surprise you? Does it sadden you?
It does sadden me. And Matt, I know some of his friends. Some of his friends are friends, you know, so I'm fully aware of the fact that he doesn't, he's just suddenly cut off all contact with them. And I think it does surprise me. I think it probably even surprises him. If you'd said to him about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, certainly when I was there, you know, in the 2020s, you will be kind of estranged from your father. You'll have very little to do with your brother. You know, you'll be living in the States, no longer no longer working with the royal family. I don't think he would quite have believed it, because that wasn't his, as far as I was aware, that wasn't his goals.
Well, indeed, the whole thing is very, very sad. Grant, the book is a bestseller, and understandably so. Why? Well, because you're more than just a journalist. You've been there, you've got the T-shirt, The Royal Butler, My Remarkable Life of Royal Service by Grant Harold is out now. Grant, lovely to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
We'll catch up very soon. What a fascinating conversation that was. Grant likes Harry and can't believe that this has happened to him. What has happened to Harry? I've got two words for you. Meghan Markle. Biggest mistake of his life. But what can you do? Each to their own. I'm not going to cry him a river, and I'm not going to play the world's smallest violin. Much more to come. This is Talk Breakfast. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands?
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes, is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the Marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 8. This is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you on a Sunday morning. Happy Sunday, one and all. This is the beginning of something of a Dolan marathon. I'm delighted to say I'm going to be on the airwaves every day for a couple of weeks because I'm looking after Talk Breakfast, as always, over the weekend. But I'm Ian Collins from Monday, 1 p.m. till 4. So join me then. So much to get through. Breaking this morning, deal or no deal. The US Vice President, J.D. Vance, walks away from negotiations with Iran. Is it time for the Donald to step in and finish the job? We'll bring you up to date with the latest developments in the Middle East. Meanwhile, shockers, thousands of migrants from Afghanistan enter the UK on a Ukrainian visa. What the hell's going on? We've got the inside story. And it's the interview they all wanted in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. The Daily Mail's Robert Hardman joins us to discuss his remarkable book about Queen Elizabeth II. What would she make of King Charles's reign? What would she make of Harry and Meghan and of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor? And is she our greatest ever Briton? That's a Talk Breakfast exclusive. Robert Hardman, very shortly on the show. Dolan's Dispatch at 9 o'clock as well. Now, you can give us a call. My phone number is 0344 499 1000. The brilliant Rory is taking your calls today, doing an excellent job. He has a very fine Irish accent. I've got to say, he really ought to be on the radio. Beautiful voice, very fine figure of a man, but he's taking your calls. And it's a simple question today. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? With the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, saying that our military is at its weakest for 400 years. Do you trust Starmer to look after defence? How safe is Britain in Sir Keir's hands? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. Reacting to the big stories of the day, I'm delighted to welcome a very old friend of mine, the leader of Advance UK, Ben Habib. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Mark.
Very good to see you. Your reaction to the news that the Chagos Islands surrender appears to be dead in the water?
Well, I hope it is dead in the water. They have a way of continuing to bring this thing back. But it was and remains an awful deal if it should go ahead. It should never have been put on the table, frankly. You might recall, Mark, that the reason Chagos was, the move towards handing Chagos over to Mauritius was motivated by an International Court of Justice ruling, a non-binding ruling in 2019, which directed the British government on the basis that the splitting of the British overseas Indian territories in 1965 hadn't been properly done, and Mauritius, which had been split off from the Chagos Islands back in 1965, should never have been split off. But of course, Mauritius and Chagos entered British ownership, as it were, in 1810 collectively, and they were never part of the same sovereign entity. And so on this advisory ruling back in 2019, it was in fact the Conservatives who took steps to hand Chagos over to Mauritius, something that should never have been initiated. But then, of course, Starmer inherited the move towards handing Chagos over to Mauritius, gold-plated it, added billions more to the pot for Mauritius, just as you would, of course, if you hate your own country. And but thankfully, I think as a result of a collective effort by some members of the Conservative Party, a lady called Claire Bullivant, who you probably know, Mark,
yes,
don't you, who runs the Great British PAC, amazing lady, who's fought a rearguard action for which she's had very little credit, bringing this to President Trump's attention, launching 2 judicial reviews, one on the Chagos deal itself and then another on the right of the Chagosians, who now I think there are 4 or 5 Chagosians, who've gone back to to Chagos and are living on Chagos, much to the consternation of the British government. And because of actions of people like her and some members of the Conservative Party, we have now got this apparent reversal. And of course, it comes significantly, I think, because Trump has called us out. Trump has looked at it and said, you know, this is absolutely absurd. Diego Garcia is critical for American security. We're not handing it over to an ally of the Chinese, which is what Mauritius effectively is.
Well, in around an hour's time, Ben, we're going to be heading to the Chagos Islands. We're going to connect with Adam Holloway, former Member of Parliament, who's campaigning for the Chagosians. So we will go straight to that territory. But this administration won't give up the Chagos surrender without a fight.
No, it won't. And there are opportunities. I think there's a Foreign Commonwealth Development Office mission out to Mauritius at the end of April. And, you know, they might try and get some concessions out of Mauritius and then bring the deal back to the table, claiming that it's a new deal and a better deal and one that they can push through. So the challenge, I think, that people like Claire Bullivant, the British PAC, have at the moment is making sure that nothing is done in Parliament this side of prorogation so that it pushes it through to the next stage. And then we just fight one battle at a time, repeatedly trying to make sure this government doesn't do anti-British things.
Most definitely. Well, we've been asking a simple question of our audience this morning, Ben, and it's as follows. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? So if you'll forgive me, Ben, let's take a call from Lenny in Ashford, who thinks he has the answer. Good morning, Lenny.
Good morning, Mark. What it is, we're in a very frightening position. And that is, I think, Starmer is causing a lot of trouble internally in our country and externally. And we haven't got any, and we cannot handle any of the problems that come our way. Very simply, I mean, we've already lost the control of 9 of our cities and 9 of our largest cities, where the indigenous people are not in control of them cities anymore. And with Starmer, he's just given £50 million to a terrorist who is murdering Christians. Now, we're supposed to be a Christian country. Now, how do you give someone £50 million who's murdering people with the same faith as yourself?
Lenny, it makes no sense, does it? What's your reaction, Ben Habib, to what Lenny has had to say?
Well, I completely agree with him. I think welcoming is his name al-Shara, former al-Qaeda member, now president of Syria, who is killing Druze by the dozen and is wanted for human rights crimes post having taken over as president. Obviously, when he was a member of al-Qaeda, he was perpetrating crimes against humanity, but he's continued to do it. And now you see him welcomed into 10 Downing Street, given 50 million quid and welcomed actually broadly across the West, which is absolutely bizarre. At the same time as Israel is having to bomb parts of Syria because of its interference in Israel's territory. This man should be nowhere near number 10. And it signifies really a complete collapse in the moral compass of our government. You know, Starmer was out in the Middle East recently, as you would have seen last week, meeting heads of state. And what he was effectively telling the heads of state in the Middle East is, we should be negotiating, all of you should be negotiating with Iran, completely forgetting that these people don't hate their own countries the way he seems to hate the United Kingdom. And they've all just been on the receiving end of intercontinental ballistic missile attacks and drone attacks from Iran. They didn't want to hear that message. The UAE is literally up in arms against Iran. Qatar is extremely upset with Iran. But you have our prime minister, who wasn't prepared to defend Cyprus, wasn't prepared to defend Diego Garcia in this context when 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles were fired by Iran against it, going out to the Middle East, making the case that these people should all be laying down their arms to Iran. At the same time, as I say, welcome this Syrian president who's former al-Qaeda. At the same time, by the way, we haven't touched on it, but handing over Gibraltar effectively to the European Union, giving up a key strategic former British territory. I know technically they claim it's still part of the UK, but it's under the control of the EU. We've been using that as a military base since 1713. It was instrumental in all the Napoleonic wars, instrumental in World War I, instrumental in World War II. And we've just handed that over to the European Union. We are doing repeated harm to British national interests. And then, of course, the optical visual impression that everyone in this country has of our no borders because we can't stop dinghies in the channel. We talk about our military being hollowed out, but it is our institutions and our the very commitment of our government and those who represent us in Parliament being hollowed out to the point that they no longer represent British national interests right across the board. Every single issue you look at, our interests are being sacrificed on some ridiculous, extreme ideological altar.
I couldn't disagree. Thank you for an excellent call, Lenny. And this is the point about illegal immigration, Ben. Notwithstanding the cost, the impact on communities, the safety of our citizens, notwithstanding the humanitarian nature of this scandal, given the fact that people are dying in the Channel, this is a massive national security problem too.
It is. There's no point talking about the need, rightly talking about the need to strengthen our armed forces, if you've got thousands and thousands of people of whom we know nothing coming into the country across the Channel entirely unchallenged. It makes a mockery of who we are as a nation. Borders exist in order to define a country. They need to be enforced. And it's not about deterrence. Of course, we shouldn't be paying benefits to people who come here illegally. They should be detained and deported. Of course, that's obvious. But they shouldn't be allowed to enter the country in the first place. There was a time when the Channel acted as a moat for the United Kingdom. Anyone trying to enter the UK coming across our moat, the Channel, knew that they would face the full force of the British Navy. Nowadays, we don't have that. We're hijacked in this by the European Convention of Human Rights, the Human Rights Act, which, by the way, I'm slightly darting around, but I hope I'm painting a collage which comes together. It's the same act of Parliament that is now motivating this government to bring in something called the Troubles Bill, so that our former military, our veterans, can be prosecuted for the service that they've rendered our country, putting their lives at risk, protecting us. Who's going to join the armed forces if they know that when they go into battle, they will be ill-equipped, and what they do in battle will then be dragged out through the comfy sort of 2020 vision of judges sitting in armchairs 20 years later and finding them wanting and then putting them in prison? It is absolutely absurd. We have lost the plot right across every single security aspect of the United Kingdom. No borders, no military, and no legal architecture which protects this country.
And Ben, MI6 are clear that some of the people crossing the Channel in small boats have terror links. There are some concerns that the Iranian regime is using the boats as a way of infiltrating the country and threatening our security.
Of course they would. I mean, if you see a country that is prepared to take in thousands and thousands of men of fighting age, and you hold that country as your enemy, as Iran holds us, of course you're going to infiltrate. We must have tens of thousands of people who hate this country in this country now at the behest of nations like Iran, Syria, this chap who we welcomed into 10 Downing Street, and other nations.
They're looking for an open door. Where better to look than the Channel?
Absolutely, 100%. And then you get the stupidity of Healy saying that we're aware that 3 Russian subs have been cruising across our waters for months. But, guess what, Putin? We see you. Putin, we are projecting huge weakness to the world, huge weakness as a nation. And when foreign powers perceive you to be weak, they will exploit that weakness. And Putin only understands one thing. Most heads of state across the world only understand one thing, and it's raw power, and we're projecting that we have none.
Ben, we know you've got a packed schedule. Can you stay with us for a few more minutes?
Of course.
Brilliant news. Well, that's great. Let's hang on to Ben Habib for a few minutes, leader of Advance UK. We're also going to be joined by the fearless Peter Barnes, political strategist and broadcaster. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? This is Talk Breakfast.
Is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've put together a very special Dolan's Dispatch for 9 a.m. It's about how the policies of this government have struck at the heart of one of the greatest British ideas, which is fairness. And that is a special Dolan's Dispatch at 9 o'clock. I highly recommend that you listen to it. I also highly recommend you listen to Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK, and broadcaster and political strategist Peter Barnes, who both join me now. Peter, how safe is Britain in Sir Keir Starmer's hands?
It's not. It's not safe. If you can think of a decision and you find the worst thing to do, that is what Keir Starmer's going to do every single time. The one thing you can quite rely on him to be is bad. So at the end of the day, you know, no matter whether it's the Chagos deal with dealing with Trump or any of these issues, he's going to pick the worst thing because he doesn't have a guiding principle of what is right and what is wrong, because he's waiting for international law or a structure or a bureaucracy to tell him what to do. He's not leading. He's waiting for the answer and he wants to implement it. Is why you keep saying very correctly this morning that he's a manager. He's not a leader. He's not devising policy. He's implementing somebody else's policy. And that is the bigger problem, is who's giving him the policies that he's judging whether it's right or wrong against. And 9 times out of 10, it's Ed Miliband, and therefore you know we're in a lot of trouble.
Is a defence available for the Prime Minister that what's playing out in the Middle East is a hot mess and he was right to avoid it, Peter?
No, because you can't avoid it. The nation state is dead. We now live in the market state. So what happens in the internal mechanisms of one country around the world affects this nation because of things like oil prices, because of energy, because of immigration, trade, all these kind of things. The nation state is rather collapsed because one state can't exist without the kind of harmony of everything else. This is why what's really happened in this Iran crisis is it's stripped away the hand-holding and the come-by and realize, as Bennaby perfectly said, it is about raw power. It is about your actual ability to make things happen. That is international politics, and Keir Starmer doesn't understand it. And more importantly, he's got nothing to make things happen with, because the successive governments, the Conservatives blamed on this, that they hollowed out the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army itself. But also, it's in terms of the actual technical skill that we have. We've lost a lot of senior people within the armed forces, and that is the same in the police as well. Do you know, at every marker, this country has diminished and itself. And everything Ben said, by the way, before the break, is exactly why he should be a member of Parliament at the next general election.
Is that going to happen, Ben? Do you have designs on the House of Commons? Do you think you can win a seat?
Well, I'm leading a political party, so I do have designs on a seat in the House of Commons. Whether or not I get to the House of Commons remains to be determined, of course.
Can a defence be made on the part of the Prime Minister, Ben, that our depleted military is not of his making, and that perhaps he has sidestepped what's happening in Iran and may be the beneficiary of that in the months ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's curious. Kemi Badenoch came out yesterday and said, or yesterday or day before yesterday, saying that since 1989, every single year military spending has gone down. 22 out of those 37 years since 1989 have been under Tory government. Military spending has been reducing throughout that period. We haven't had an eye, as Peter says. We've hollowed out not just our hardware and software, but also the capability for generations to pass down military knowledge. What was so brilliant about our military was that the know-how was passed down generation to generation. But of course, it's much worse than that, as I touched on in the earlier segment. The entire legislative architecture militates against people wanting to go into the military. You're told not to be proud of the United Kingdom. You're told that if you go into the military and you kill an enemy combatant, you will have your actions pored over by a court many years later and possibly face criminal justice and go to jail, criminal proceedings and go to prison. This is no way to keep a country strong. A country must have borders. Those borders must be enforced, and the people who enforce those borders in the broader and most narrow sense of that action need to know that they will have the skills, the military know-how, hardware and software at their disposal to do it, and that they will not be held to account for their legitimate actions on behalf of the state. It's very simple. I think I've articulated it in those few words, but we are setting aside all of that. The Human Rights Act undermines our military's ability to do its job. The Troubles Bill that Starmer's bringing in to charge former veterans who served in Northern Ireland, that is motivated by the Human Rights Act. He's motivated by it. When you talked about refugees coming in from Ukraine, actually originating in Syria, the Middle East, Afghanistan and other places, that too is the European Convention of Human Rights being used in our human rights law to bring these people in under false pretenses. Everything is being undermined in this country's security at the moment. And of course, as Peter rightly said, it doesn't extend just to the military. It's also our own police forces. Our domestic law and order is being threatened by these very same forces. There has to be a complete sea change of attitude, of legislative framework, and of our approach to policing and security for this country.
Ben, is it realistic that that will happen in the foreseeable future?
It's deeply distressing. When I think about politics, I don't think about, you asked me, do you see yourself getting a seat in Parliament? I don't think about politics in the sense of how do I get into power. What I think about are what are the principles and solutions required to save this country. And whenever I think about them, it is deeply depressing because I do not see a single politician in Parliament, not one single politician in Parliament who is capable wherewithal and has the wherewithal and the intent to deliver what's necessary for this country. And it's certainly not Keir Starmer or anyone in the Labour Party. The Tory party is pretending that it can do the job, but some of what Kemi's been saying actually reveals a great sickness at the heart of the Tory party, which they haven't yet cured. And then, of course, as I'm sure Peter will agree, reform is a complete basket case. It's here, there, and everywhere. It's a bit like the Scarlet Pimpernel. It's everywhere, but you can't find it. And it's not doing any definable job.
Peter, meanwhile, deal or no deal, the Vice President of the United States has flown back to Washington without an agreement with Iran. Having supported this war, are you now getting cold feet?
No, because was somewhat of an inevitability. The idea that he was going to get the first deal on the table. I mean, let's be real. Again, we're doing the trick that orange man bad people do, where you just expect the highest and most achievable thing to be the first outcome. What's actually happened here is that, in a way, Vance is somewhat of the kind of advanced party. He's the one that's gone in first. Donald Trump is going in next. So what you do is you kind of send your underboss, then you send the Don. And that's what's really happened here, because it's about the mounting pressure. You've got to keep the pressure on Iran.
So some of this is theatre as well as strategy.
All of this is theatre. All of this is theatre. It is about also making sure that people believe in the theatre, because peace is nothing more than the idea that you're not going to do something. So therefore, you have to make sure that that is at least a everyone kind of sings from the same hymn sheet, as it were. So, but what's really important here, I think, is we have to look at what Donald Trump is really trying to achieve with the ceasefire. It's actually not about regime change. He's trying to remake Iran in America's favor, not in America's image. So the one thing they learned from Iraq was that if you get rid of Saddam Hussein and you keep, you try to make it democracy, it's never going to work. It turns into chaos. They can't afford that, given the Strait of Hormuz, given this nuclear material and everything else. They need to make it stable. So what you do is you batter it down to like 1% of capability, and then you were able to negotiate it with that. So you could keep the mullahs in power, but they can't do anything. And the real sticking points are, ironically, on the nuclear capability program, and also the ability to call on the proxies, like some kind of bond, like henchman things. And Iran doesn't want to let go of them. And, it's rather ridiculous that they would even try, because most of Hamas and most of the Houthis and the other ones, they don't really want to fight for them anymore, because they tried to put them up against the American army. I think there was a quote in one of the newspapers that said, these people suddenly realized they didn't want to go to that many funerals. So, yeah, I mean, Iran is in a very, very difficult place, because you pointed out a very, very important point, and that was the economic situation in Iran. It is absolutely dire. It's about to contract 2.7%. It's 99% food inflation, 63% inflation just on record. Anyway, the reason a lot of this happened is because the people kind of got rather irritated that all the money was going into this kind of nuclear program that nobody wanted, and it wasn't going into schools and hospitals and the economy and all that kind of thing. So therefore, that's why everybody was rather wanting rid of the regime, was actually because it wasn't working for them. And it's all kind of one step at a time. But again, we're judging it on outcome rather than realizing we're at stage one.
Before I give Ben the last word, rapid fire from you if we can, Peter. First of all, is the hope that Iran will give up the ability to produce nuclear weapons for the birds? Is it existential for the regime to be able to make nukes?
If they don't let it go, there will be a lot more bombing, because that is a red line, because that is why Israel
You haven't answered my question, Peter. Get off that fence. You sound like a politician. I thought you had opinions. Since when do I sit on a fence?
Since when do I sit on a fence? No, it's not for the birds at all. It's not for the birds at all. And what it will be is whether Iran is going to kind of test American patience.
So you think they will, in principle, if there's enough leverage against them and the threat of more bombing, including their energy infrastructure, you think that they will yield on the nuclear weapon issue, that they will sacrifice the ability to make nukes? You think that deal is possible?
I do, but more likely is that Donald Trump is just going to blow it off the face of the earth, I imagine, because I don't think they'll actually yield, and therefore we will see an increase in military action again.
And then, Ben, finally, sorry, not Ben, we'll come back to Ben in a moment. Peter, finally, lovely to have you on the show. Peter, can I just ask you about whether what's happening in Lebanon and Israel's attacks on Lebanon are a barrier to a peace deal with Iran?
That's a complicated question, but realistically, the reason it's carried on is it's a backstop. This is the kind of to make sure that if the mullahs ever come back into power and Iran rises again, it can't attack Israel in the same way. It has been put down into such a kind of dormant state that kind of resurrecting it would be near on impossible. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu is going, like this kind of everything must be perfect kind of approach, because it's about securing the future of the regional security, but also mainly for the security of Israel, because this is their one moment to make sure that all the bad guys don't exist anymore.
Interesting. Ben, there are many on the right that have struggled with this war in Iran. Are you one of them?
I'm not. I would much prefer there wasn't a war, but as Peter rightly says, it's our war. The idea that you can just step away from it and not face up to the threats posed by Iran, that is for the birds. Iran is a nation that hates the West. It's a massive causer of trouble. The Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iraq, even Libya, they were interfering in Libya. There's a huge battle going on between Saudi and the US on one side and Iran on the other. Iran has intercontinental ballistic missiles. It used them against us. If it could put a nuclear warhead on it, it would use that nuclear warhead. And however this fight ends, it's been a necessary fight. And if that wasn't clear to people on the right-hand side of British politics to start with, it should be clear now. Iran has bombed non-combatant countries. It has blocked the Strait of Hormuz, which is it's a war crime, blocking natural resources, undermining other countries' ability to get natural resources. Iran is a rogue state. And if we can't stop their nuclear program now, we will have to come back in 5 years and bomb them again, back to a position where we can control them, and rinse and repeat that every 5 years unless and until they come to their senses. Iran, this war against Iran, bombing Iran, making sure that its military capability is degraded, was absolutely vital. Absolutely vital.
Two very good friends of mine. What a treat to be on the radio and on the telly at the same time. My sincere thanks to Ben Habib, who's the leader of Advance UK, and Peter Barnes, political strategist and broadcaster. Gents, thank you so much for your time. More to come. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? 8:34. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast, Dolan's Dispatch at 9 a.m. and at 9:30, a Talk Breakfast exclusive. Robert Hardman, the author of a brand new book about Queen Elizabeth II. It's the interview they all wanted. We've got it. Robert Hardman from the Daily Mail, live at 9:30. But a very worrying front page headline in The Sun on Sunday. TV legend in hospital. Eamonn's Katie, I'm praying. 999 ambulance dash after stroke. Eamonn Holmes has suffered a stroke in the last 24 hours. His partner has been praying for him after this medical incident. The 66-year-old broadcaster was found out cold at home and rushed to hospital. He's now recovering. Katie Alexander, his partner, wrote online, "What a week. Prayer, prayer each day." Well, reacting to this worrying news, I'm delighted to welcome legendary broadcaster in his own right, Alex Dyke. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, Mark. This is very, very sad, isn't it? I know Eamonn a little bit, not like you, not a friend like you, but I know him a little bit. And when I went in to do the paper review on his breakfast show, he was the kindest person in the studio to me. I mean, everybody was lovely, but he was especially welcoming. And he is such a lovely, lovely guy. And I woke up to this news this morning when I was listening to you driving in on the radio. And the worrying thing about strokes, of course, is we've seen the TV commercials. You have to act fast.
Yeah.
And he was found at home alone.
Unresponsive.
Unresponsive. So we don't know what state he's in. I just hope that he's going to be okay, because he's a lovely, lovely man.
Well, I've tried to reach out and I've got no more intel, no more detail. We obviously pray that he makes a swift recovery. It's clear that Eamonn has been in the wars with his health for many years now. I mean, you know as well as I do, having worked with him at first hand, that he struggles to move now.
Sure.
That he's in a wheelchair. It's quite a miracle how he gets up to do that breakfast show.
And you and I have been in the studio working with him, knowing he's in a great deal of pain, and
because it's back, mainly at the back, isn't it?
So he puts it on for the cameras, but you know, when they go to the commercial break, then he will talk about his pain. But he soldiers on because he loves the work, and of course he's got a podcast which is really good.
Yeah.
That he does with another friend of ours, and he's
Paul Coit.
Paul Coit, who's a lovely guy.
And it's produced by Dean Spencer, who is the executive producer of this very show.
It's a very small world.
Well, what it is with Dean Spencer, right, he's a hit maker. Now, if Dean Spencer's involved, it's a hit.
Well, I heard he was a hit man. Is that the same thing?
It's a little bit of that, yeah.
But and of course, Eamonn
he hits the odd bum note as well.
Yeah, was going to go out on tour. So
that was the plan.
I know there's some venues he's booked for towards the end of the year. So hopefully he'll be well enough to do those. But in the Sun today, they say he underwent spinal surgery in September 2022, and that went wrong. So he had to have a second operation the following year. Then he had a bathroom fall, which we all remember, those who know. Last year, and now this. So yeah, let's just send him our prayers.
Well, life has been very unkind to him in recent years. His marriage to Ruth Langsford ended, and that appears to have been quite acrimonious. He's been pursued by HMRC for taxes, which is a big old headache. I think that he was presenting his work as being self-employed, and they said, no, you were a member of staff, and he's landed a tax bill there. His back, we mentioned that, his mobility is not great. And now this, it's just pretty tough, isn't it? I mean, can you give me a sense, having been in this field of broadcasting for all these years, how big a figure Eamonn Holmes actually is?
Well, he's not far off national treasure, is he? When you think about it, he started back in probably the early 80s.
Breakfast TV.
Yeah, and before that...
When Breakfast TV was massive.
Yeah, when there were only 4 channels.
Yeah, and they were getting 10, 12, 15 million viewers every day.
Yeah. And he did a lot before that. He worked for quite some time for the BBC, doing quiz shows and things like that. I think he did the lottery.
Yes, he did the National Lottery for a long time, yeah.
And he was on Talk doing Drive Time.
He told me that, Mark, that's a great gig, you know, it's 15 minutes work.
Yeah.
It's a lovely gig.
And
There's nothing to it.
When you did that this morning and I was driving in, it was like he was here in the studio with you.
Well, listen, you can only impersonate him. You'll never be the original and the best. There's a sort of element of Wogan about him too,
I was
isn't there?
just going to say that. He's got that Irish charm. He makes everything look so relaxed and so easy. And I think because he's such a pro, he's been able to deal with the pain when he's been in front of the TV cameras.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think life is a funny thing where things go so swimmingly for a long time, and he was one of the biggest stars in the country, obviously on a six-figure salary. He went from ITV, he did the Sky breakfast show, Sunrise as well, which was a big hit. He's been a fixture on the box for many years. And then you just have this torrid period, marriage, health, finances, all a complete nightmare.
And
It's
apparently
just
that
brutal.
tax bill, he had to cough up £1 million.
Yeah.
Now, even if you're a well-off television presenter, that's still a lot of loose change to find.
I'll tell you what sticks in the craw slightly. Oh, Lorraine Kelly. Oh, hey, Lorraine Kelly. She managed successfully to convince HMRC that she wasn't a member of staff of ITV and that she was playing a character of Lorraine Kelly on a TV show. Did you hear about that?
I did.
That was her main defence, is that Lorraine Kelly is a sort of construct. It's a character that she plays, and therefore it's a performance, so she's not a member of staff. She got away without paying the tax. Well, she paid the tax, but not the extra tax that you would be liable for if you were a member of staff.
I wonder who she is at home. I wonder who the real Lorraine is.
You didn't realise that she was, you know, the answer to Helen Mirren or Dame Judi Dench, the greatest actress in the country. It's Lorraine.
She fools them all.
Wee Rosie. So I've made her sound like Billy Connolly, haven't I, really?
Yes.
Or Rab C. Nesbitt.
Yes,
I'd rather watch Rab C. Nesbitt. But look, that's just an opinion. So we wish Eamonn well. By the way, what is it about the British people that they love Irish broadcasters? Because you've got Wogan, you've also got Graham Norton, Eamonn Holmes. For some reason, the Brits have adopted the Irish and love to watch them.
Well, it's because we're very close to them, aren't we? And also, it's that gentle charm. It's not aggressive, is it? All those people you've mentioned, they're not aggressive shock jocks. They're charming. They're like one of the family. I mean, who would want to live with people like you and I? We're too aggressive.
Well, we're your worst nightmare, and it's lovely to have your company. Alex Dyke, let's get on to some other big stories. What's this about Rolf Harris?
Right, so I've got a friend who's a YouTuber. And he's called The Bearded Explorer, and he started his channel by finding abandoned cars. So he'd find an E-Type Jag in a barn. And his abandoned mission, his abandoned journey has got bigger and bigger and bigger. So he finds his channel's great, and I'm addicted to it, and he finds some really good stuff. So he went to Rolf Harris's mansion. He had heard it was up for sale. It's abandoned. And I've got a little bit of video for you. Now, if you're listening on the radio, you will hear the audio description. So shall I play you this, Mark, and then we'll talk about it afterwards?
New lease of life. This house is absolutely massive. The driveway is completely overgrown. This one is being completely taken over by nature. I wonder if there's anything hiding in here. It's 5 families living here.
No, I think 8.
They've been hanging here so long, they have naturally...
Give me the microphone, pull it. Wrong clip, let's reset. Okay, let's go back. We need the Rolf Harris clip.
Right, so I've got 2 clips for you, so it's a little bit confusing. That's the second one I'm going to play, which is the abandoned military base in Germany. The first one I want to play you is Rolf's abandoned mansion.
Okay, and it's, by the way, this place is worth millions. So here we go now, Rolf Harris's mansion. Take it away.
Now filming Rolf Harris's derelict £4 million mansion. This place is slowly being reclaimed by nature. We are now inside Rolf Harris's mansion. This hasn't been used in a long, long time.
An ID card?
He's obviously paid a lot of money to have that done. We're currently in the basement of Rolf Harris's mansion. Even some of his gardening equipment is still here. It's an absolutely brilliant little design. You can see how derelict it is in here now. Look at the water damage in here. This window's been smashed. Owen Harris, female head. That's his wife.
Right, now, there is a real metaphor there. That is the disgraced Rolf Harris's house, OK? A former mansion located in the village of Bray in Berkshire, right, which is incredibly expensive area. All mansions, all lovely houses, near Maidenhead. The property served as his home for over 6 decades. He died there in May 2023. And this place, £4 million value, 6,440 square feet.
Sure.
2-story architect designed. I mean, this is a palace.
Yeah, this is, if you are watching the video and not listening on the radio, this is a mid-century design, a classic mid-century design.
What, 1950s, 60s?
Yeah.
Modern architecture.
Modern architecture. And this is based on Rolf's original home in Australia. He basically had it rebuilt here when he was coining it in as and he really was a national treasure. I mean, until we realised how bad he was, a lot of us thought he was wonderful.
Yeah.
So this house, as you can see, has been abandoned for quite a few years. And as the Bearded Explorer says in that video, nature is taking over. So it was up for $4 million, but because it was Rolf's, they couldn't get that money. So they halved the price to $2 million, and it failed to sell at auction.
Which is astonishing, because the house is an extraordinary piece of real estate. It's on the river, you're surrounded by multi-millionaires, so although $2 million big ones is a stonking amount of cash, technically it's a bargain.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it would be best to bulldoze it, because the site is probably worth more than the house, because it was Rolf's. It's a beautiful place to live. Uri Geller was just down the road. Paul Daniels was just down the road. There's a lot of showbiz people there. A lot of millionaires live there. But I thought it was a fascinating clip to bring in, and an interesting story about this abandoned mansion.
I mean, it's worth remembering, isn't it? Nobody saw that coming with Rolf Harris. A lot of people felt that Jimmy Savile was a strange man, and there were rumours about Savile for years. None of us knew that Rolf Harris was a wrong 'un.
No, and the more you look into his life, the more slightly creepy it is. In the video, the Bearded Explorer found a mould of his wife's head in the basement. And by the way,
can I just say I've got one of those as well, of Mrs. Dolan. And it freaks me out because it follows me around the room, and the nose is too big. It's actually unflattering.
They didn't break in. You're allowed to go in as long as you don't break any locks or force your way in. If there's an open window or an open door, legally these guys are allowed to go in. And he goes in, and if he finds anything, he always puts it back the way it was, and they leave the properties with absolutely nothing.
I mean, let's just remind ourselves, this is a guy that was convicted in 2014 of 12 indecent assaults against young females. We won't go further than that because it's a family show, but these crimes were wild, and it's astonishing that someone that loved could have been so wicked.
Yeah, and like a lot of these celebrities, they have just about everything in life they've ever wanted, and they have to push the envelope in a sickening way. I don't get it.
Well, he had the cartoon show, which was Rolf Cartoons Club, which I used to like. Do you remember the catchphrase, "Can you tell what it is yet?"
Yeah.
Then there was all the documentaries. He painted the Queen, no less.
Animal Hospital on the BBC in the 90s was
when
massive.
he used to cry about poor little Benji.
Yeah.
The Benji, the tabby cat, had to be put down, and he'd get his little tissue out and have a little
Hit
cry.
records.
Massive. What is it? Timey Kangaroo Down Sport?
Yeah, loads of them.
Which is Phil Dave's catchphrase when he's had a drink. And then the other point worth mentioning is that his art was worth millions too. Did you know that?
Yeah.
That he was a massively successful fine artist before it went wrong. Well, there you go. A wicked man. More from the brilliant Alex Dyke next. Don't go anywhere. This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Dolan's Dispatch coming at 9 a.m. It's a special one. I recommend that you tune in then. You can hear the show on DAB+, in-app and online. You can also watch us. Head to YouTube and search Talk, and up we pop with me live in the studio. If you're watching, you'll see the very handsome Alex Dyke, radio legend, broadcasting icon, and wearing a gorgeous pinstripe blazer today.
Thank you.
It's good to see the pinstripe back, isn't it? Because it comes and goes.
Not in my wardrobe, it doesn't. It stays.
Well, listen, you know what they say, form is temporary, class is permanent.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of which, this is very interesting. You've discovered this guy that makes videos of ex-military bases, and these military bases are massive and derelict.
Well, the great thing about radio, or radio on TV, is it's shifting sands, isn't it? So driving up this morning, I heard you and Duncan Barks talking about the military, and I thought, I know, let's talk about that instead. So this guy I've just told you about, the bearded explorer who's on YouTube and videoed that mansion, has also been to a town, well, it was known as Little Britain. It's in Germany. Rhein-Dahlen is the name of the town. It was a major military base in Germany from 1954 to 2013. Then when we got to the end of the Cold War in the early 90s, they thought, well, we don't need these bases anymore. These places cost millions. This one housed 12,000 people. It had 2 cinemas, a massive swimming pool, and I mean massive swimming pool, football pitches, libraries, schools, churches, a fire station, a police station, and a hospital. It was returned to the German authorities in 2013, right? So can I show you a little clip of this now, and you can hear on the radio?
Definitely, and we're able to talk over it when it plays.
Well, it's got some
comments,
narration on it.
Great, let's take a listen.
New lease of life. This house is absolutely massive. The driveway is completely overgrown. This one is being completely taken over by nature. I wonder if there's anything hiding in here. So 5 families living here.
No, I think 8.
They've been hanging here so long they have naturally decayed. I think this could be where the locals meet. That is one very steep driveway. It looks like this has been stolen and dumped here. There are so many abandoned properties here. It is ridiculous. We've just found a massive sinkhole in the front of this property. Some kind of security?
So these were neighbourhoods and communities built for people in the military?
Yeah.
And they've been left derelict. Why are they derelict? Germany, just like the UK, hasn't got enough houses, right?
Exactly.
So why are these places left to neglect?
I don't know, Mark, but these would have cost the British government billions. And there were dozens of these.
Now, you say the British government. Why were we funding that?
Well, because
post-World War.
Yeah. Because after the Second World War, we built these towns, and there were dozens of these towns, lots in Germany, some in Gibraltar.
Oh, I see. We built them for our own service personnel.
Our own, yeah. So,
right.
So you'd have the RAF there, and you'd have.
So in a sense, we kind of should own that stuff.
Yeah.
We probably don't, right?
No,
do you think it's still in our like property?
No, we handed them back to the German authorities.
Well, that was our first mistake.
Exactly. Billions.
Do you think Donald Trump would do that as a real estate entrepreneur?
No, I don't think he would. I mean, it's wicked the way that all governments have wasted money. But these homes would be ideal for immigrants, wouldn't they?
It's 100% true.
So, and it would cost millions to put them back to be usable, but they cost billions to build.
Well, I'll tell you what I also wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if they were made available to young British people who can't get in on the housing ladder.
Or young German people.
Well, let's not rule that out. We're very excited at 9:30 because it's the interview they all wanted, a Talk Breakfast exclusive with the author of a brand new book about Queen Elizabeth. You've got an amazing story about Elizabeth.
Well, it's in the Sun actually. It's not my story, but I thought this would tee you up nicely for your interview. Queen's dilemma on COVID speech. So the Queen's famous "We will meet again" in her COVID address, of course, was taken from Vera Lynn's World War II classic, We'll Meet Again.
Yeah.
She nearly didn't say it. She didn't want that in it because she thought it made her speech seem too whimsical and
a bit showy.
Yeah,
because she was a very discreet, understated person.
Absolutely. But one of her royal aides, in fact, it was her private secretary, more or less insisted that she used this.
And it was the line that resonated, wasn't it?
It's the one we remember. And it did have a kind of World War II, we're going to be all right, let's just sit it out together. I remember seeing something on social media at the beginning of COVID, comparing it to World War II, saying they fought them on the beaches, all you've got to do is sit on the sofa. That's all you've got to do. But actually, it wasn't that easy for most of us, was it? I mean,
it wasn't.
A few people said they enjoyed it if they got a big bounce back loan and they could sit in their beach house. But for a lot of people, it was a living hell.
Most definitely. I think that the laptop classes loved the lockdowns with their kind of sprawling North London gardens, but there were people cooped up in flats who had misery for 2.5 years, and I think it was a big mistake, but it's all about opinions. What about Waitrose, by the way? I know that's your preferred supermarket.
Well, this is another...
Because you're a man of means. The drinks are on you, Alex Dyke.
This is Tony Parsons, who's done a full page in The Sun today. It's page 13. I'm not going to steal his thunder and read it all out, but his headline is, London I Love teeters on the edge of lawlessness, and he opens it up like this, Mark. If Britain was not stark raving mad, then we would be honouring Walker Smith today. Mr. Smith tackled a shoplifter in Waitrose, a place he worked and loved for 17 years.
Ridiculous.
And instead of getting a medal, he got the sack.
Parsons is one of those people that lives in the real world, isn't he? He's a commentator that, you know, he understands like the reality of life, like life in Britain, which those that govern us don't. They don't live in the real world. Alex.
No, it's people like Tony Parsons who are the backbone of Britain, who believe in decent Christian values.
Yeah.
Not Christianity as a religion, but Christian values.
Bingo. Well, another value that's British is fairness, which is being assaulted at the moment. That's today's Dolan's Dispatch. Alex Dyke, come back and see you soon. Lovely to have your company. This is Talk Breakfast. Don't go anywhere.
My fellow Americans, let me begin by congratulating the team at NASA and our brave astronauts on the successful launch of Artemis 2. It was quite something. It will be traveling further than any manned rocket has ever flown and will very substantially pass the moon, go around it, and come back home from a distance that has never been done before. It's amazing.
Due to that suit being pressurized and expanded, as well as the umbilicals being connected.
We are now falling to the moon rather than rising away from Earth. It is an amazing milestone.
We are standing by for the Integrity crew aboard Orion to surpass the Apollo 13 record.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Two minutes past 9. Don't tell me you're still in bed. Come on, what was it? Was it Robin Williams said, seize the day? Mark Dolan, Talk Breakfast. Happy Sunday, one and all. I hope you're having a good start to the Lord's Day. You may well still be snuggled under that duvet after a big Saturday night out, or you might be at work or at the tail end of a shift, in which case I salute your contribution to the unstoppable powerhouse that is the great British economy. Whatever you're up to, lovely to have your company on a Sunday morning. I'm delighted to say that this is a bit of a 2-week marathon that's ensuing, because for all of next week and the following week, I shall be in for Ian Collins here on Talk, Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. for the next 2 weeks. Do join me, and I'll be staying on Saturday and Sunday breakfast as well. You can't have too much of a good thing. Breaking this morning, deal or no deal, the US Vice President J.D. Vance walks away from negotiations with Iran. Is it time for Donald to step in and finish the job? Shock as thousands of migrants from Afghanistan come into the UK on a Ukrainian visa. What the hell is going on? We have the inside story. And it is the interview they all wanted in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. The Daily Mail's Robert Hardman joins us to discuss his new book about Queen Elizabeth II. What would Elizabeth make of Charles's performance as king? What would she make of Harry and Meghan? What would she make of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor? And is she our greatest ever Briton? Robert Hardman live at 9:30. And I've got to say, it's a day of exclusives, because in just a few minutes' time, we are heading straight over to the Chagos Islands, and former MP and campaigner on the part of the Chagosians, Adam Holloway, live from the Chagos Islands, reacting to the news that that terrible deal, the Chagos Islands surrender, is dead in the water. Praise be. And we're running a simple question this morning with the Leader of the Opposition revealing that our armed forces are weaker than they have been for 400 years. How safe is Britain in Starmer's hands? 0344 499 1000. Rory is taking your calls. You can text the word TALK in your message to 87222 or leave us a voice note. Nahar is directing our TV output, so you can watch the show being broadcast. Head to YouTube. Search Talking Up We Pop. You'll be able to see Robert Hardman, to see our guest from the Chagos Islands, and to watch Dolan's Dispatch. Head to YouTube, search Talking Up We Pop. Phil Dave is our brilliant executive producer today, and the one and only Luke pressing the buttons. So much to get through, as the saying goes. Let's talk. And as always, every Friday, Saturday and Sunday on Breakfast, we kick off with Dolan's Dispatch. If I could sum Britain up in a word, there are a few options. Democratic, that's a good word, isn't it? Tolerant, we're definitely tolerant. Decent, respectful, friendly, warm, productive. We are fun. What about creative? We're very creative. The Beatles, Shakespeare, Sir Elton John. We are positive. Another word would be disciplined, and perhaps most importantly, we are fair. And the concept of fairness is a uniquely British trait. Getting your round in at the pub is fair. Queuing, waiting your turn, letting the car in front of you pass through in exchange for a friendly wave or a flash of the headlights, that's fair. Giving up your seat on the train or the bus for a pregnant woman or an older person, fair. And funnily enough, on this big sporting weekend of Premier League matches, golf and the Grand National, many of our values as a society are rooted in professional sport, most of which, by the way, we invented, and it's all based around fairness. The concept of fair play is within the DNA of football, of golf, and of rugby. And we know that if someone is being very unfair, ungracious, a bit devious, breaking the rules, we literally say that's just not cricket, don't we? If something's unfair, you say that's just not cricket. It is shorthand for something that isn't fair. Which is why it's so devastating to have a government whose policies are so unfair to its own people. Driving farmers to suicide with a cruel family tax on their farms, which means it's not viable to hand their land to the next generation, unfair. And a very similar thing that's now happening in the construction industry, where people can't pass on their construction business to the next generation without a massive levy that we're going to use this show to campaign on. Really unfair. What about pensioners shivering in their homes in the winter when they've paid into the system for years and are our most vulnerable people? It's not fair. Pricing young people out of the jobs market with the minimum wage hike, causing literally the highest youth unemployment in Europe, unfair. And what worries me in particular about young people and unfairness is what that means politically. Because with eye-watering student debts, when at least half of them would have been better off in apprenticeships or the jobs market from day one, with no conceivable hope of getting on the housing ladder, even if they give up avocado toast and lattes, and with the very real threat of artificial intelligence on the jobs market going forward, I'm really worried that an unfair system stacked against young people will attract them to a radical left-wing political cause. If young people consider society to be so unfair, if they feel they have no stake in the economy, no skin in the game, then they will likely go over to the Green Party and Captain Cleavage himself, Zach Polanski. And be clear, that is neo-communism, and it will be the end of the country. The national insurance tax rate is unfair on businesses who employ people and who generate national income. It's unfair because many of these businesses, some of them small, are folding every day. Many of them have given up recruitment and investment, and many are laying people off, which is why we've seen the return of something that had effectively been eradicated, unemployment. And not having a job is deeply unfair. Now, I saw the scourge of unemployment when I was growing up above my dad's pub in the 1980s. There were times during that decade when talented men in their 30s would be made redundant. I saw it with my own eyes, and they would drink what remained of their savings as the dole queues lengthened. Now, I'm a great believer in self-responsibility. Life is what you make of it. But I will say I do consider it a fundamental human right to have a job. So to see joblessness come back is tragic. It's bad for the economy because these people wind up on benefits. It's bad for their mental and physical health as they rot at home in front of Netflix. And it's unfair on a society that must bankroll their existence via benefits. All of it's unfair, folks. Scrapping jury trials, which have worked quite well for 900 years, is unfair. Unfair on the victims of crime and the innocent who may suffer the consequences of a politically motivated or activist judge. Insane workers' rights rules are unfair on companies who are battling inflation, a depressed economy in which the public have stopped spending money, and the highest tax burden since the Second World War. If you're unfair on organisations that give people jobs, that provide services and pay money into the Treasury, let me tell you, that doesn't end well. And you don't need a degree in politics, philosophy and economics from Oxford bloody University to know it. Open borders are unfair on those communities that are rendered less safe by undocumented men whose backgrounds we don't know. That's very clear, isn't it? None of it is fair. Having to accommodate people that shouldn't be here in the first place. The way our country is being run is stupid, mindless, idiotic, ideological, mad and wrong. In fact, I would say it's just not cricket. 0344 499 1000. Your reaction to today's Dolan's Dispatch. 9:12. Lillian is in Birmingham. Hello, Lillian.
Oh, good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Lillian, I'm really worried that the policies that are being inflicted on the country are just unfair.
Well, let me tell you now, it's Starmer for the British people. Don't make me laugh. That flip-flopping wet wipe and his cronies are the enemy of the state. The only qualification you need for that government is to pledge to be a traitor to the British people. And defenceless, that's what we're left. We're left defenceless. We're the laughing stock of the world. He's destroyed our thing with the USA.
Our special relationship.
Yes, that's it. I couldn't think what it was called. And also, he's prosecuting our soldiers. You know, it's just unthinkable. And also, as well, he's still got the borders wide open. Now, he could build our defences in a week. If he closed them borders, stop paying these illegals the benefits, we'd be rich. Let me tell you. And like, we're looking at, you can't go shopping because you've got gangs of feral rats running through the streets and pillaging. We've got rapes every day of our girls and our women, you know, and don't even get me started on that Khan, that pygmy. I mean, he wants to get out of his armoured car and walk the streets of London. He's coming on there making an interview saying that the social media, Facebook, YouTube, are making everything cut that's happening.
Yes, he calls it a wave of misinformation. Well, it's not misinformation to point out that this country is increasingly poor and dangerous.
Exactly. This guy is absolutely deluded. In fact, they're all deluded. And they shouldn't even be allowed anywhere near the cenotaph on Remembrance Day because they're traitors to the country.
Lillian, why do you think this has happened? Why are these figures in power and why are they doing this to us?
Well, I think they got in power because half of us British people didn't even bother to vote. And they all need now to get off their arses and vote because otherwise this country is going to be absolutely destroyed. We're already in the making of it now. We need action.
How have things changed in Birmingham in your lifetime, Lillian?
Well, I don't even go into town. You take your life in your hands if you go into Birmingham.
You can't go into your own city of birth, England's second city.
No, not without fear. No, so I don't go.
And Birmingham used to be one of the magnificent metropolises of Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even take me two little dogs out now because I'm too scared to take the dogs out. You know what I mean? It's just, I can't believe the change in this country. When I was a kid, we used to leave the front door open all night unlocked, you know, and we were a community.
What would happen if you did that now? If you left the door unlocked, what would happen, Lillian?
Well, I'd have any Tom, Dick and Harry coming in, you know, attacking me, killing me dogs, robbing me. You know, half the time I don't even go to bed, to be honest. I sleep on the settee.
Why do you sleep on the settee, Lillian? If that's not impertinent and too personal a question.
Yeah, because I feel more safer on the settee because I can hear if anybody's out the front.
I mean, that is just shocking. That's damning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lillian, my heart goes out to you, my darling. It's not fair. That's the theme of today's Dolan's Dispatch. It's not fair and it's not right.
No, I mean, like, my son's gone mad at me because, like, I'm a working pensioner. I'm on my break at the minute to take this phone call.
Are you serious? Well, I'm honoured that you've taken your break to join us, Lillian.
Yeah, because, like, you know, this is so important. It's more important than me stopping and having a cup of coffee and a puff on my vape. This is very important. And what absolutely annoys me as well, at these Palestine protests, you've got pensioners that are protesting there. They're ridiculous. That they're throwing all that their generations before them have done to make this country safe. They're traitors as well. They're disgusting.
Lillian, can the country be saved? Can we steer this great nation back in the right direction?
Yeah, we can. We haven't lost it yet. We're British, and we'll fight for our country.
And do you see a figure who can help us do that?
Yeah, I do. And I'm sorry, but it's restore Britain for me, Rupert, though.
A lot of people like Rupert.
Yeah. He's the man for the job. Let me tell you that now. He'll put this country right.
Lillian, I'm so honoured that you've interrupted your break to join us, and I can assure you, on behalf of my many thousands of viewers and listeners, it's very important what you've done. We have to have this conversation. Lillian there, a working pensioner, by the way, who pays her taxes, which don't even touch the sides in terms of the amount of waste that's going on in the country. And she sleeps on the settee, right? She sleeps on her sofa because she feels safer in her own home, in the living room, than in her bedroom, because she might be able to hear if someone is trying to get into her property. Let that sink in. The world has gone mad. Lillian, we love you loads. Thank you for a brilliant call. Good luck with the rest of your shift. And that's a moment for me. I don't know. I mean, I'm supposed to talk. I've got no words. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
What an extraordinary conversation with Lillian in Birmingham that was. And let's make sure, Phil Dave, our executive producer, we get that out on X and on YouTube. And let's get Lillian's message out to the world. This is a woman, a working pensioner, who sleeps on the sofa in her lounge for fear of crime, for fear that someone will come into her property and harm her and her dogs. Welcome to Broken Britain. And if you're one of those politicians that think Britain isn't broken, I can't help you. Just listen to Lillian. Now, fantastic news. The Chagos Islands surrender looks to be dead in the water. A man that's been campaigning hard for the plight of the Chagosian people who want to remain British is Adam Holloway, former MP and army officer, who is a few hundred kilometres from the Chagos Islands as we speak. Adam, thank you for joining us on Talk Breakfast.
Thank you for having me. Just to warn you, the internet connection here is very, very bad. If I drop off, I'll be back within about 30 seconds. So maybe you can fill.
Of course.
Telling people some of the history if they don't know it.
Well, we're very lucky to have you on the show. Adam, what motivated you to the cause of the Chagosians in the first place?
Well, I mean, clearly, there has been a massive historical injustice. I mean, in the 1960s and 70s, Britain basically exiled several thousand people who'd been there, many for generations. Some of them were taken off in manacles. Their pets were gassed. They were sent off to Mauritius in sort of cargo ships with animals in the holds. There was nothing for them when they got there. They were disliked, treated in a very sort of unpleasant, racist way. They found it hard to get jobs. One of the guys on the island remembers his teenage years mostly for foraging in bins for food. So there's been this historical injustice, technically, in fact, a crime against humanity, committed by us, by people like me, back then. So I thought that it would be quite helpful if we were to put some Chagosians back on the island, because this has been their dream. You know, the generation that wasn't even born there, is their dream. So I raised quite a lot of money for some very generous, forward-thinking philanthropists, and we did a very long-range approach to the island so that we wouldn't be detected, all the way from Thailand, touching into resupply in Sri Lanka, then heading, I think, 6 days and nights, thrashing through the Indian Ocean to slip into the atoll, sort of in the early hours of a Monday morning. And now we're in the happy situation. We've got 6 settlers there. I spent the first 10 days living with them on the island. They're getting on very well. A resupply is going on literally today. I'm not there because our government has banned me from traveling. That's fine. You know, I've found plenty of things to do here, which will be helpful to our cause. But we're in a very good place now, because the Supreme Court has said that these people have a right of abode. I mean, there's literally been nobody there for the last 60 years. The court said there's a right of abode. So I'm hoping, my plan now is to take legal action in order to establish that other people are free to go. And you know, I can tell you about what happened yesterday, if you like. But
please do, because no, please just you just take control of this one, Adam, because what's emerged is a viral video in the last 24 hours of a boat that contains supplies that are headed to the Chagosians to support them so they can maintain themselves on the island. And you've been thwarted by the British authorities. Tell me more.
Yeah, so that's our boat. Well, it belongs to one of the philanthropists. We've stuffed it with supplies. The government has been, it might be very heavy-handed. I mean, I think if people living on a desert island make a list of things they want, I don't really think it's for the British government to tell you what you can and can't take. But you know, significantly, what happened yesterday when the boat arrived. I mean, normally the British Indian Ocean Territory has one patrol ship. You know, it's got a crew on it and it's got a fisheries protection officer, nothing else. Yesterday, we arrived there, and there's a boat with Royal Marines in it. There's a couple of policemen looking ridiculous, wearing black, sort of, you know, normal police outfits and waistcoats and hats that they might be wearing, you know, at Reading Station in the boiling heat. And then there were a couple of customs and immigration officers. And these guys went through every single box of supplies that we had. And let me give you some examples, some of the things that they wouldn't allow in because they weren't on the list. Bedding, sunglasses, what else? Cans of Coca-Cola. I mean, I've got the whole list somewhere. I mean, it was outrageous, but most outrageous of all was they tried to restrict the amount of medical supplies we could take, and they would not allow us to offload from the boat to give to the Chagosians on the island. They wouldn't let us take a solar-powered briefcase, emergency water-making piece of equipment. So we've got people on a desert island where it doesn't always rain, and where it's surrounded by salt water, and the British government, even though those people have got a right to be there, won't let them have an emergency water maker. And actually it gets worse, because we had bought a large powerboat. And the powerboat was because they are 288 miles that way, and the nearest hospital is 5 miles that way. So at the moment, my best, the best I could do for a medical evacuation would be about 80 hours. With this powerboat, it would be, in the right sea state, about 10 hours. And do you know the government said that we could not take it? So I'm now of the mind that, you know, our philanthropists have been paying all this money. We've been spending, you know, these many, many months trying to make this happen, and we have made it happen. But I'm just thinking now, you know, why are we doing this? I mean, these people have got a right to be there. It was the British government that removed them originally. In the 60 years that have passed, the infrastructure has all just collapsed into the jungle. So if they're giving up, making it hard for us to resupply them, then maybe the government would like to take that responsibility on. And, you know, as for medical equipment and the medical evacuation boat, okay, so they don't want us to give them that life-saving capacity. Fine, British government, take responsibility for medical evacuation from now.
Well, it's ironic, isn't it, Adam, because this government can stop the boats when they want to. In this case, a humanitarian project to get basic supplies and medicine to Chagosians on the island. There have been a lot of responses to this video now of these figures, these authorities, customs, cops, the rest of it, on the boat that you've provided. Nigel Farage has said, despite the Chagos surrender deal being scrapped, the humanitarian resupply vessel to Ile-du-Coin has been boarded by heavy-handed authorities. Farage goes on to say they're refusing to allow essential items such as certain medicines and water makers to be landed. This is disgraceful, vindictive behaviour against those on the island from a government that usually claims to be concerned with human rights. It's just possible that the intervention of the authorities in thwarting this vessel, Adam, have broken the law.
I don't know. And I'll say this, what Nigel means when he says heavy-handed, it's about the sort of the instructions and the ministers gave in terms of what we were allowed to land on the islands. To be very fair, the police and the customs officers and the Marines could not have been more charming and conciliatory. In fact, you know, sometimes you think when dealing with these people that they actually agree with our cause. I mean,
right. They're just doing their job.
Apart from these ridiculous so-called human rights lawyers, I think any decent person in the country would think that actually the Chagosians probably have been treated a bit badly. And frankly, if they want to go on and live on a desert island, far from medical help, you know, that is their choice. You know, people in other far distant territories, you know, the South Sandwich Islands or, you know, wherever else, they have a long trip to hospital. But the reality is that of the 6 people on the island, 4 of them's parents were born on the island. And then you've got Antoine, who was conceived on the island. And by the way, whose brother died on the ship when they were being exiled to Mauritius. And then you've got Michel, who's 72, who was 14 when he was exiled. And he remembers very well, as I've alluded to already, spending his teenage years basically being told by people in Mauritius that, you know, he was black, he wasn't worth educating, and getting food out of dustbins. And just going back to the human rights laws, I mean, it's ironic, isn't it, that Britain is talking about handing these islands to the country that most Mauritians, I beg your pardon, most Chagosians see as an oppressor because they had a miserable time in Mauritius, which is why they all came to London, Crawley, as soon as they got a passport. We're talking about giving the sea to an ally of China. So there is the big sort of geostrategic picture here, which is what first got me sort of involved. And that's this. We give these islands to Mauritius, and not next year or in 5 years' time, but over the next couple of decades, the Chinese, who are their allies, come in, they put listening posts on all these little atolls, including the ones that are being eaten by ants, including the one that our guys are on now. And over time, because of surveillance, it makes the base at Diego Garcia very much less useful. So there is a sort of big issue here about the security of the West.
Well, there most definitely is. And briefly, Adam, if you can, how are those on the island bearing up physically and mentally?
Mentally, they're very happy because that's where they want to be. I mean, even the ones who weren't born there, led by the amazing Misty Mandarin, who's their elected first minister, they've kind of had a dream of returning. So for them, that they feel like they're sort of the advance party for bringing back the Chagosians, and our ambition is not limited. We're now going to focus on legal action against the government. But, I want to see more people there in quite short order. I want to support Misty in putting up some structures, because at the moment they're living in tents. But they're very happy. In terms of health, on this latest resupply, we've got the diabetes medicine to one of them who's diabetic. We've got a doctor there at the moment doing on this resupply, doing medical training on the beach, literally as we speak now. I'll send you a video if you like after
Please
this.
do.
They are in good shape. And one of the guys, Pascal, he has been bitten by a spider. So he's got a nasty infection in his leg. But it's perfect timing. We've got our volunteer doctor who's already started on a course of antibiotics. So that should be okay. But I just emphasize again, our big problem here, is medical evacuation, because we don't have a satisfactory answer to that. We got this boat, and we were hoping to just give them some agency to rescue themselves, but this government has taken that away. So,
Adam,
as I say, when I get back to London, sorry, I just finished. When I get back to London, I'm going to go see ministers, and I'm just going to ask them what they thought they were doing, and tell them that really they need to find some evacuation provision, because they've ruined mine.
Well, Adam, if you'd like to communicate directly with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, what would you say to Sir Keir Starmer right now?
Well, I mean, when I was in Parliament, I had some very nice chats with him. I mean, he's being thoroughly demonised now as completely hopeless, and he probably is. But, he's fundamentally a decent man. And I just urge him to look at this issue not through the lens of, Islington dinner parties and, your lefty multimillionaire lawyer friends, but just think about it from the point of view of a young man or woman whose parents were exiled from these islands and who are sitting unemployed and undereducated in Crawley, dreaming of returning home. Just think about natural justice.
And Adam, finally, and we're so grateful for your time, and more power to you, I'm going to read out details of the GoFundMe page, which will allow people to support these Chagosians, and I'll give those details in just a moment. Last but not least for now, Adam, what do you make of, and what do those on the island make of the news that Donald Trump has vetoed the handover of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius?
Well, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So whatever anyone thinks of Donald Trump, sometimes he gets things very, very right, and this is absolutely one of them. And I know that Misty, the First Minister, wants to change the name of one of the islands. There are many little atolls down there, but there's one called Eagle Island, and he's so chuffed with President Trump that he wants to call it Trump Island.
Adam, I would let you go, but we've got some breaking news, which is the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has just spoken to Sky News and has said that the Chagos Islands deal is not dead. The Chagos Islands deal is not dead. That is breaking news. Your reaction while we have you a few hundred kilometres from the Chagos Islands?
Well, this is the big risk. It's not dead. It's just not happening in this parliamentary term. But what have we got now? What's the reality we've got on the ground now? We've got 6 people, one of whom was born there, one of whom was conceived there, the rest whose parents were born there, who now legally have a right of abode, who are implacably opposed to being handed to Mauritius, who they can't bear, to Mauritius, whose environmental standards are shocking, whose government is deeply corrupt. There is the world's biggest marine, no fishery protected area around those islands. Mauritius will trash that, and in the coming years, you mark my words, that base will be unusable. I mean, honestly, Britain's being run by the sort of student common room of a not very good university at the moment. It's truly terrifying where we've got to.
Well put. Now, Adam, I'm going to give our viewers and listeners details of a GoFundMe page to support the resettlement of the Chagosians. There are 6 on the islands at the moment, and they need medical supplies, they need food, they need water, they need ice-making equipment. So if you want to support the Chagosians, just go to GoFundMe and search Support Resettlement. That is Support Resettlement. It's been set up by Marie Vanessa Kalu, but Support Resettlement are the key words. They've raised $4,000 so far, and if you can possibly stretch to a few quid, I know that those on the islands will appreciate the support. Adam, we're going to stay in touch with you. More power to you. Thank you for your time. Adam is a few hundred kilometres from the Chagos Islands with a support vessel that has been thwarted in its efforts by UK authorities. My thanks to Adam Holloway, former MP and Army officer. More to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's the interview they all wanted. Robert Hardman from the Daily Mail's written a book about Queen Elizabeth. What kind of person was she? What would she make of Harry and Meghan, of the King's reign, and of Andrew? That is just a few minutes from now. But first, summer is on the way, and there's no better way of spending a sunny afternoon than at Wimbledon. And we're giving you the chance to be there. We've got 2 VIP tickets on Centre Court for Monday the 6th of July. And you can be there right in the heart of the action with official Wimbledon Devonshire seats and enjoy exclusive access to the Devonshire Lounge all day long too. Right, the Devonshire Lounge is the lap of luxury. Here's how you win. Take a listen.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 16th of April 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
And a very good luck to one and all. How safe is Britain in Sir Keir Starmer's hands? David is in Essex. Hello, Dave.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, thank you for your call. What's your appraisal of the Prime Minister's performance?
Well, he's got a lot of cards to play when it comes to Donald Trump that he's simply not playing. And my point is this. The Second World War began in 1939. And we stood alone against the German, the Nazi,
threat.
And let's be honest, the Americans didn't enter the war until 1941, and Roosevelt put it to Winston Churchill that he'd only help us if we relinquished our grip on our empire and give a lot of these countries their independence. And Winston Churchill was literally forced into sort of agreeing. Not only that, but this support that they were supposed to give us, it was always on the proviso that we'd pay them back. They never really wholeheartedly, joined us. It was, and they say that they won the Second World War. they didn't win the Second World War. It was the Russians that beat the Sixth Army in Stalingrad. They won the war and started to reverse all the Nazi gains. So, I mean, why we're at odds with Russia? I mean, when the Soviet Union, I mean, the Russians was just as pleased to get rid of Stalin as we were. And I mean, Putin, he actually wanted to join NATO. And all Russia wants is a fair crack at the markets. They don't want to take over Europe. It's an absolute ridiculous concept.
And Dave, listen, I appreciate the historic backdrop to that, and it's very interesting what you've had to say. Briefly, only because the clock is against us, how do you see things playing out in Iran? Do you think there will be a deal?
No. What's going to happen is that Israel is going to go rogue, and they're going to end up doing something drastic. But as far as Starmer is concerned, I give Starmer 10 out of 10 for keeping us out of this war, just like Harold Wilson kept us out of the Vietnam War. It's a debacle, and Trump is in a lot of trouble because he's been doing things that are against international law. And I think our Prime Minister should be given credit that he's standing up for international law and keeping us out of this debacle.
Dave, thank you for a brilliant call. I wish we had longer. Lots more to come. 9:44, a Talk Breakfast exclusive next.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the publishing sensation of the year. The book is quite simply called Elizabeth II, In Private, in Public, The Inside Story. Its author is the Daily Mail journalist Robert Hardman, and he joins me now. Hello, Robert.
Good morning, Mark.
Congratulations on the release of the book. It's made many headlines. We are well aware of Queen Elizabeth, the monarch. What can you tell us about Elizabeth, the human being?
Well, as I hope I explain in the book, you have effectively you had private queen and public queen, and both were remarkable and very effective. But I think people tend still to have this idea of the late queen as very dutiful. We know she was very attentive to duty, quite serious, quite reserved. I don't think the drama series The Crown did her any favors. It made her look quite a downbeat person who was sort of constantly being buffeted by events with little sense of her own agency. And actually, she was a very shrewd stateswoman. She could be very sharp. She could be very funny. But I think what was so remarkable was that she remained, her authority was completely undiminished to the day she died. There was never any talk of, oh, it's time she really ought to step down, she ought to stand aside. She was the queen, to her dying day. And as I explain in the book, she was still actually at work on her deathbed when they opened up her last red box, which was in her bedroom on the day she died. There in it was the list of citations for the Order of Merit. She'd been busy making nominations. I mean, she was extraordinary, and we all miss her. But I think what she did was she enabled this country to sort of punch above its weight often at times when we were either in the international doghouse or we were an international joke, as we were in, say, the mid to late 70s. She was what made Britain proud. And people still want to talk about it. People said to me when I embarked on this book, they said, there can't be anything new to say. I mean, come on, everything's been written. And that's simply not true. Because A, there's always new papers and what have you coming out. But B, people who may not have spoken about it before want to talk about it, which is one of the reasons why one of the people I interviewed for my book was Donald Trump.
You interviewed the President of the United States about Elizabeth.
Yeah, I 3.5 months ago, at rather short notice, I was told, get to Trump International Golf Club in Florida. He'll see you. Well, it didn't start too well, because when I got there, he professed to not know anything about an interview, and he was quite shocked I didn't play golf. But after that, when I said we wanted to talk about, I'm just here to hear your reflections on Elizabeth II, Mr. President. He went, do you want something to eat? So we sat down for breakfast, and then had several conversations over the course of the weekend, including over dinner as well. And I was only there because he adored the Queen. He just thought she was extraordinary, and he loves the monarchy. I mean, he's a huge fan of the King as well, which I think is one of the reasons why I know people are very worried about the state visit in a couple of weeks. But actually, I think it's going to go fine, because he is a huge royalist.
And what was Donald Trump's appraisal of the Queen's qualities?
Well, the word he used more than any other was she was unbelievable. He just said she was unbelievable. He kept saying it again and again. But he was quite funny. He said on his first meeting with her, he said, the first thing he asked her in a very sort of Trumpian way was, he said, I wanted to ask her who was her favorite president. And I kept saying, come on, who was it? Was it Reagan? Was it Eisenhower? And he said all she said was, well, they were all very nice. And he kept trying on that tack. And then he tried, say, switch tack. And he tried, he said, so I started asking about who was her favorite prime minister. And it was the same thing, they were all very nice. And he said, actually, he realized that was sort of one of the secrets for her, enduring power, influence, position, whatever, was that, she handled that sort of thing very well. He said, most of us would have just sort of said something and that it would have popped, but she didn't. And he was very struck by they got on. I mean, there was a real rapport there. Their first meeting was meant to last 15 minutes, and it ended up lasting for nearly an hour. Because the thing they have in common, particularly, is a great love of Scotland. Trump's mother was a MacLeod from the Isle of Lewis, and the Queen, of course, had a Scottish mother, and both of them owned fairly substantial bits of Scotland. So that was something in common. But he came again the next year on a state visit, and then he came, of course, last year on his state visit to the King. And actually, if you look back through the speech he made last year at the state banquet, I mean, it's quite a remarkable eulogy of all things British. I mean, it might seem a bit odd given some of the things he's been saying lately. These sort of random outbursts against the British government or the British armed forces or whatever. But deep down, he is viscerally an Anglophile. He feels a deep connection, and that, as I say, I think that's why whatever else may go on, if the world hasn't exploded by then, I think the state visit will still be okay.
Well, indeed, and I think Elizabeth deserves credit for the strength of the special relationship with the United States. She has been central to that for decades, and worth reminding ourselves. I'll let you fact check me if required, Robert, but I think the Queen was just 25 years of age when she acceded to the throne, and her first Prime Minister was Winston Churchill, no less.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, she really knew every significant and substantial figure from the end of the Second World War to the present day. Yeah, Winston Churchill, obviously wonderful. I mean, she I love those movie tone newsreels. She did know everybody, and Churchill was her first. Liz Truss was her last. She'd appointed Liz Truss.
Go out with a bang.
Yeah, but but that's just her British prime ministers. What people often forget, of course, she was queen at the time of her death of 15 nations, and they all had their prime ministers too. I mean, I once tried to tot up the number of prime ministers she'd had in all her realms. And it was almost impossible because I'd sort of come to what I thought was the final figure. And then there was an election in the Solomon Islands the next day. So there was yet another one. So you could never really be entirely sure. But it was certainly well over 200 prime ministers around the world.
She's a 25-year-old young woman. Did she struggle to settle in the role?
Well, what I explain in the book is it was a genuine shock. I mean, everyone knew the king was ill in 1952. But as she told one of my interviewees, she thought he had at least another year to go. And suddenly this happened. He died in the middle of the night at Sandringham while she was in the branches of a giant fig tree in Aberdare National Park in Kenya at a place called Treetops. And people were, I mean, the world was in shock. She was one of the last to know. But what was interesting in those days was there was no rush. She was 25. She was a mother of two. But there was a sort of sense of, well, we must let her sort of find her feet. So she didn't actually broadcast, for example. No one heard her voice as Queen for 10 months till her Christmas broadcast in 1952. Court mourning, which was when the royal household sort of shuts down at a time of death, that lasted for 3 months. Whereas if you compare it to the accession of Charles III, I mean, he was on the airwaves within 24 hours. Court mourning lasted just 1 week. So there was just different expectations. But the first few years of her reign were very exciting for Britain. It was a sort of era of rejuvenation. We were still on rations. We'd just come out of the war. We were nearly bankrupt. And people genuinely felt that this new young queen marked a sort of a new era. And that's something, clearly that's not how people felt when with the accession of the new king. I mean, there wasn't a sense of Britain is about to sort of be reborn as a sort of great world power. But that's how they did feel in the 50s. And that sort of golden era, there was a sort of honeymoon period which lasted for 4 years. And then in 1956, we had the Suez crisis when Britain, France and Israel hatched a madcap plot to try and reclaim the Suez Canal that went very badly wrong. And we ended up in the sort of international pariah status with America being very, very critical, America threatening to devalue the pound. And that was a turning point. Britain at that point was in a very bad place. And what did we do to sort it out? We sent the Queen on a state visit to Washington to win over American hearts and minds. And it was a great success. So, there are echoes. She spent a lot of her life making up for political blunders, shall we say.
Well, I know. I mean, this woman, the flavour of your book, by the way, it's a cracking read. It's such a page-turner, and we'll never scratch the surface of what's in the book, so you need to get your hands on the copy. Some of the headlines are absolutely huge. She came close to a nervous breakdown in 1969. There's a very, very moving passage in the book there. Very interesting that she wanted her great-grandchildren at Balmoral before she died. If we go rapid fire with the few minutes that we have left, Robert, this was a woman of diplomatic genius, of charm, of intelligence, of statecraft. You suggest in the book that perhaps her protection of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and those allegations that faced him might have been a rare misstep.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't many mistakes in her reign, but she's not infallible, and she did. In the 70-year reign, there were mistakes, and one of them was not to rein in Prince Andrew when he was clearly heading into sort of difficult waters. I mean, before the whole Epstein saga blew up, he was a pretty rickety trade envoy. She had tried very hard her staff had been leaning on the Royal Navy to try and keep finding a role for Andrew in the Navy. And that failed. So in 2001, it was the Blair government, actually nudged by a certain Peter Mandelson, who got in this role as a trade envoy, and he was basically left to sort of just go off and hang out with all sorts of unsavoury characters. And that was a mistake, no question. But I think when historians come to look back on the totality of her 70-year reign, Andrew will be one of the things that she got wrong. And by the way, she wasn't the only person who indulged Andrew.
Of course.
I think there was a problem there was a problem in that people didn't like to tackle Andrew because they thought that somehow they might be upsetting the Queen. But as I discovered, she knew all his faults. He was not her favourite. He was the one she worried about a lot because she knew that he was trouble.
Interesting to bust that myth. And just a few seconds to go, Robert. I need to ask you about the Sussexes. What would the Queen make of what's happening at the moment? They're off on one of those faux royal trips to Australia.
Yes.
Harry's suing the owners of the Daily Mail, your paper, and now he's being sued by his own charity, Centre Barley. What would the great Queen think of all of that?
I think she would just think the whole thing was very sad and utterly needless. And if they just, calmed down in January 2020, instead of going off in